I call this meeting to order. It is December 17th. It's our last council meeting of the year, 2024. I just had a flashback, sorry. Anyway, I could do a roll call, please?
Gabriel,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Evans,
Here.
Buchan,
Yeah.
Wood,
Here.
English.
Here.
All right, tonight's invocation is from Chris Laurie from Anthem, Coeur d'Alene. Chris, are you here? I guess not. Moving on. Amendments to the agendas. Any comments from council?
Pledge?
The pledge.
Pledge? Pledge
Mr.
of
Mayor, if we could
allegiance?
do the Pledge of Allegiance now.
Okay,
Thank you.
I was trying to get through the minutes here. Christy Wood, would you follow us in the pledge?
Yes, sir.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Christy. Oh, how about amendments to the agenda? All right, folks, we have two public hearings tonight. The first one is a public hearing on a vacation of an alley, and if you're here to talk about that, we need you to go back and sign up for it, if you would, please. The other one is a quasi-judicial public hearing on an annexation on 15th Street. Again, if you'd like to address the council, please sign up on that sheet. All right, moving on, presentations. We're going to talk about the storms. Todd Fisher from Streets, welcome, Todd.
Thank you.
Todd, is there going to be snow this season?
Yes,
Okay.
yesterday. You might have missed it. We are hoping for snow. A lot of the long-term forecasts have changed. They have kind of flattened it out. Last one I looked at, we were seeing predictions of 80 inches, and we're back down around 50, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before I start on our snow plan, quick presentation. We had Miss Cosmo's class, third graders, come to the Streets and Engineering Department, and they helped us name the storms this year. So that is a class of kiddos that came to our facility. We took a moment to have some fun. A great group of kids for third graders, great questions. We talked about Leaf Fest. This happened while we were doing leaf pickup, so they got to go outside and see all the leaves showing up at our shop. We talked about drainage and how the leaves affect drainage and why we do so much with our drainage program to keep the leaves and other things out of the lake. We also took a moment to talk about RRFBs, rapid flashing beacons, because not everybody stops for them. So while we had them there, we had slides and we showed them and kind of explained to these kiddos what they're supposed to do. And then we got to why they were there. Their class was learning about winter and all of that. Their teacher contacted us a couple months back and had lots of questions. So we invited them up. This is our newest snowplow. We let them sign their names on the front of it and climb in and out of the truck, so they had a lot of fun with that. We also talked about de-icing and sanding, how all that works, and that's one of our newest de-icer trucks that we purchased from the wastewater department this last year, and it's become a great tool. As you can see, they had lots of questions with that as well. And then the best part was we took a candle that we use in our road construction and we made a snow gauge for these kids, and we've already had updates. It's in outside their window, and they are going to call us and tell us how many inches of snow we get. I will say, I don't think the young lady is here. One of the gals, as we were explaining how this works, took a moment to raise her hand, and she looked at me and said, "So basically I'm doing your job." So it was a lot of fun, and we are anxious to get some snow so that these kiddos can report back. So here is our storms that the kids came up with this year. They like the military aircraft. They gave us a lot of names. I will say there is 60 other names that they provided. This is the ones we felt would be fun this year. It's been a while since we did a theme like this. So this is the list of storm names that will be on the website with our winter operation plan that we'll be going over shortly. So if I could have the mayor come down, we have some gifts for these kiddos, and maybe back up just a little so they can take a picture.
Todd, do you know their names you can introduce?
I can you guys share your names? William and Adeline. So William and Adeline. And so we made a sign, a street sign with all the kiddos' first name on it so they can display it in the class. And then Miss Corsmo has a sign that she can put above her door. So anyway. And I think some of the parents want to get a quick picture with you here. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. We hope to keep this going. Last year we didn't have as much success naming the storms. Councilmember Gookin has asked about naming the sweepers, so we're going to reach out to the schools and do that here in the next few months. So.
Can we applaud them real
Yes.
quick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Best part of me and the
So,
mayor.
Todd, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask a question. So,
Yeah.
Todd, did yesterday's feeble attempt at snow qualify as phantom, or are we still waiting for storm phantom?
So normally we don't name a storm unless it's plowable,
Okay.
so we fell a little short. No, we haven't used a name yet, so. Okay, so next, I'd like to start going over this year's snow plan. I'm going to go over a few more things than I normally would do. My hope is we've made some changes, and upon council's approval, I want this to be a plan that's in place where I don't bring it back to you every year unless I make a change to the plan. If I made a change to the plan, I would bring it back, but I come every year and keep bringing the same plan. This year we did make changes, so it seems like the right time to go through some of the stuff. And then another, for instance, that we might want to come to you is like if we got a lot of snow and say we had to say we weren't going to use snow gates because the snow was so deep, I would come to you and ask for permission to do that for your approval because this is your adopted plan. So, but if we don't make changes, I would just do a presentation, kind of wrap up Leaf Fest, and then go into a presentation of how we're prepared for winter, but nothing as formal as a plan. So. Anyway, moving forward, we have also made some changes in what we call this. It's always been the snow plan. We wanted to update some things. We refer to this as our winter operations plan. Feel like it covers more of the stuff, so I wouldn't call it the snow plan. It would live on the website, approved by council. Anyway, I'll just go over a couple of the things, and there's a couple that we've made significant changes on. The winter operations plan, the Streets and Engineering Department is responsible for the performance and coordination of snow and ice control management on our city streets. Our commitment is to provide safe, passable roadways to the citizens of Coeur d'Alene during the snow season, and that is mid-November through mid-March. Streets and Engineering Department will provide monitoring of streets conditions and will respond to these conditions in accordance to the procedures outlined in this operation maintenance plan. So we added a section on de-icing or anti-icing. It was never in the plan. We get a lot of people confused about de-icing, and so we felt like we should put some verbiage in there. Basically, we do a lot of pre-treating with the de-icing. So if we hear snow is coming, we will go out the night before and actually spray de-icer on the hills, arterials, collectors, so that the snow does not bond to the asphalt. So when we show up in the morning, we have a better chance of breaking through to the asphalt and getting black pavement. Our goal is never to get to black pavement. We hope to. We do our best, but the equipment we use does not always scrape down to the asphalt floor. We will do de-icing between 32 degrees and 15 degrees. At 15 degrees, the de-icing products we use are not effective. They will actually refreeze. So at that point, we move to salt and sand. So that is part, my plan, that is part of what we plan for. The products will be applied to arterials, collectors, and hills. Residential areas will receive sand as needed. So I just want to explain, we don't use de-icer products in residential neighborhoods because it will actually refreeze. We need the traffic to be driving over it. It spreads it keeps it active. If it just sits there with no traffic, it will melt the ice and then it will refreeze as more water gets into the product. So that's why residentials, you'll see us just do sand. As far as the citywide plow, that's pretty much the same. We didn't change much. Just a reminder, at 4 inches of snowfall, myself or Justin, my assistant director, will make the call to do a citywide plow. If there is 4 inches on the ground, or if there is 3 inches on the ground with more than 4 inches predicted. So sometimes if we want to stay ahead of a cold snap or something, we might jump the gun and go a little earlier than 3 inches. But that's really hard on the plows, so we try and wait for that 3 to 4 inch mark on a citywide plow. Snow removal priorities, we kind of changed what that looks like, so I'll just go through that really quick. We used to have some stoplights in there, red, yellow, green. We tightened that up, priority 1, 2, and 3. Priority 1 are going to be your arterials, emergency service areas. So we're going to be doing all the arterials by the hospital, fire stations, police stations. Those will all be our first priority. We will move into a priority 2 scenario once we finish those priority 1. Those are going to be your collectors around schools and steep hills. So that normally happens pretty quick. When we're out doing arterials, we move into collectors pretty quick. The school district starts calling us about 4 o'clock in the morning to see if we will have their routes around the school plowed out, just so you know. The hills that we address first are listed there: Cherry Hill, Tubbs Hill, Stanley Hill, Fernan, Lakewood Drive, and Armstrong. Those are the ones that we really have problems with and have to get in front of. There's other smaller hills that we will attack at the same time, but these hills are our priorities. Priority 3, those are residential areas. Normally, we don't go into priority 3 until we've initiated a citywide plow. We're going to be out on arterials and collectors until we get enough snow, and then we move into the residentials. The downtown core, we attacked that about the same time as arterials and collectors. They're not a priority, but it normally happens first thing. That's from Front Avenue up to Indiana, and then from about First all the way through 6th, 7th Street. We do things a little different down there. We don't apply sand unless it's below 15 degrees. We normally do salt or de-icing products down there on Sherman Avenue, Lakeside, all that in the downtown core. And then when we do initiate plowing down there, we push everything to the middle, so you will see berms as usual. We're not changing that. Once we are caught up on a citywide plow, we will back up and we will remove those berms that we've created down there. We hope to do that immediately next shift as soon as we're done getting all the roads open. Equipment and personnel, that's just a brief breakdown. I thought it'd be good to list all that in this. We have a director, assistant director, we have 2 supervisors. One helps us with the crew. The other one is over all the equipment. That shop supervisor has 4 mechanics. They work full-time to keep everything working. And then we have an administrative assistant, 4 lead worker, and 22 other staff during the storm. On the bottom here, you see there's a list of our equipment. We have upgraded the equipment since I took over. If we're not plowing, we actually have up to 6 de-icers we can use versus we had 3 when I first started. So that helps us to stay in front of the storms. The more de-icer we put out, the ice doesn't build up, hopefully, and we stay in front of the storm. We also use 4 graders. We also are up to 4 sanders. You can see now one of those sanders now is equipped with a plow. That is new as of last year. The other sander is equipped with de-icer as well, so we can sand and de-ice at the same time, depending where we're at in town. And then we have our normal, the front end loaders with gates, dump trucks, and dump trucks with plows. Our schedules have pretty much stayed the same for our crews. Monday through Friday, we have a day shift that starts 7 a.m. to 3:30. We have a night shift that goes 3 p.m. to 11:30. Our early bird shift does start at 4 a.m. That is 5 personnel that are here starting at 4 a.m. They are updating me by 4 a.m. on the conditions, so I know if we're going to have to call the whole team in. Sunday night to Friday night, that's the operation that we do. On weekends, a little bit different. We have a standby shift that's on call 24 hours a day. If they can't keep up, we will call other people in to assist them, but that's weekends and holidays until we have to bring the whole crew. This is just a breakdown of all the responsibilities. I don't think I need to go through that. That's all has been in there in the past. A reminder on the ordinances, it is the property owner's responsibility in this first one to clear the snow and ice off the abutting sidewalks to their property owner, or to their property. It is also a municipal code in the second one that citizens can't push snow into the street from alleys or their property. I know that seems silly, but we actually, code enforcement spends a lot of time on that. We have a lot of citizens that like to push the snow out to the street, so. We've changed our map. We kind of took a lot out of it. The red areas are our arterials. The green is collectors. We put the interstate and Highway 95 in blue there just for reference. The gray streets are all the residential, so you can see we have a few more roads that have come online this year up north and down at Atlas waterfront. So there's more and more of those to do. And then our city limits are outlined in black. As you always, you can go online to the city's website and you can report snow removal issues. That's an example of what you'll see when you get there. The office hours that someone will answer the phone is 7 a.m. to 3:30. There is a snow line that you can leave a message on if we're not there. We answer those calls and return them each shift when we start. So they will get a phone call back if they leave a message on that line. And then finally, I just want to remind everyone, our snow gates are a tool that we lean on a lot. The design of those snow gates is to reduce the berm. It does not eliminate the berm. We get people all the time that expect us to leave 0. If we have 16 inches of snow, you might have a foot berm there, but if you look each side of the driveway, it'll be closer to 3 feet. We've reduced the berm. That is the goal. So I like to bring that up here. We get a lot of questions and we get a lot of people asking us to come and clean the little bit of berm we've left. That is not the goal. So at this point, I would take any questions.
All right, questions, council?
Mayor, thank you, Mayor. Todd, great job. I'm always amazed at how well you and your staff take care of this, and I know you can't please all the people all the time, but you guys do an amazing job.
Thank you.
If we kind of look at that picture right there, how big a deal are cars that are parked on the street? Because it seems like the roads get narrow and narrower and narrower with that.
It's a big deal, especially downtown, all throughout the city, to be honest. But we do our best to get around them. When we get out of a snow event, if there's an area that we're having a lot of problems with, we will call code enforcement. They will tag the vehicle and we'll let it be there for X amount of days, and then we go and remove snow to help get the vehicle out of there. It's a great opportunity during Leaf Fest. That is something we take advantage of while our operators are out there. If we see boats, trailers, or things that are parked out at the curb, we try and let code enforcement know, and they help us get them moved in front of winter. But it is problematic. We do ask people to try and get their vehicles off the road.
Mr. Mayor, one more if I could, please. Yes. Do you still make your own de-ice material?
We do. We do. We provide it to several municipalities in the area, NIC, the school district, and then, of course, our Parks Department, wastewater, fire, they all come and get it as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Todd, first of all, Leaf Fest, thank you for running the sweepers, because they cleaned up all those leaves that fell afterwards, and I do appreciate it. Streets look great. Are we going to have sledding hills, and where are they going to be?
So as of now, they are still at the locations. We have not moved forward to change that.
Okay.
So down on Lost and around, I'm drawing a blank right now.
Ninth?
You asked, but Boyd.
Boyd.
And then, we encourage people to use Cherry Hill. Some of the people that live on those sledding hills around streets, they don't appreciate them as much. It's still something we allow. We do put the signs out as soon as there's enough snow, we'll put the signs out there. It does become an issue at some point for fire and PD, though, if they have to get up that street. We do our best to remove the ice if requested, but as of now, they're still in place.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Todd. On the city website, there's about 7, I think, different drop-downs that have this snow information.
Okay.
When will this be posted live so people can see what the new changes are? And are you still going to have that interactive map so they know where you're going at certain points in time?
Yes, so upon approval of this plan, we would probably work on getting it updated starting tomorrow to get it up there since we're at winter. And then the map will be active. It's been having some maintenance work done to it, and so it's currently down, but I would hope before the holiday it's back up in service so that we can follow that. We will try and keep that updated to show where we've been. It's really hard to forecast where we're going, so it will definitely show where we've been. It depends on where the crews get in a shift, but it'll be the same map at this point.
But that there shows the general public what the priority list is on the map. So
It doesn't really call out the priority list on the map. It just shows what we're working on and where we've been.
Okay.
So we are looking into some options to update that. That map we've used for many, many, many years. It's time to move forward. We just haven't found a good replacement. So this year, we're going to stay with this map that we've been using, and we're hopeful to get something new.
But we can go to cdaid.org, streets, and as much information about snow removal will be there.
Correct.
Great.
Yeah. And then the snow line that I mentioned, my admin assistant does update that at the end of shift with a voicemail to say what crews have done and where we're going to start the next shift. So that is all on that line as well.
Great.
Questions? Dan, are you over there? Checking to
good.
make sure you didn't nod off. So this is going to be a annual plan that we're only going to hear tonight, and then you'll update us each year about the story, yes?
Yeah, I'll give a presentation, but this would be the adopted plan unless we make any changes to it. Then I would bring it back in front of you and address those changes. I would still expect, normally we try for this the first week of December. We weren't quite ready, but to do a Leaf Fest and a snow kind of presentation, just what we've done and where we're going, but it wouldn't be something you would have to adopt each year unless we change it. Or if you want me to bring it every year, I'm happy to do that as well.
Amy?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2024-2025 annual snow plan.
Second?
Just one question.
Second discussion.
Oh, well, did you want to name it something more like the winter something plan
So
versus snow?
So that's in the packet, yes. It will be
Oh.
called from this point
call.
forward the winter operation plan, not snow plan.
Okay,
I amend my motion to
Thank you.
approve the
Councilmember.
2024-2025 winter snow plan.
see, I am awake,
So-
okay.
Just a correction to that, so it is just the winter operation plan, there's no year on it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Come on, give
Okay.
me some more, you guys. We got little tidbits. All right. We're going to do a roll call on that or discussion. Anybody want to talk about it? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on. Public comments. Only have Paul Banoy is on the list. Come on up, Paul. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. First, I'd like to offer an invocation since Pastor Chris Laurie was not here. Would you mind?
Oh,
All right. Father, I thank you so much for our mayor. I thank you for our council members, and I thank you for this beautiful city. I thank you for the opportunity that you have provided us to live here, to serve here. And Lord, as we now end this year at this final council meeting, we are thankful for this past year, the many wonderful things we've experienced. Let your blessing continue to rest upon all of us, we pray. And Lord, give wisdom to our mayor and to our council members in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. I won't take my entire 3 minutes, I'm sure of that. I have some concerns about the emergency plan. And my recommendation is that as much as we have some failure to define certain terms, that there would be a withholding of a vote so that there's some time for discussion and for discovery. Namely, and in particular, provide limited immunity for emergency action of public employees. What is the limited immunity? What are they allowed to do and not allowed to do? That would be something I think is very important. Allow critical equipment to be commandeered by those under this standard or the plan when it is enacted. I would love to know who decides what is critical equipment and how we can define that very carefully. I think that we're talking about people's personal items and the removal of people's personal items. I might also mention that it seems to me very vague that we should have as an action item for such an act such things as power failures. We've had power failures in our community that have lasted 2, 3, sometimes longer. I remember when I first moved here, there was a power failure that lasted almost 28 days for certain individuals in our community. I'm also concerned that we could actually call an emergency plan for hail or it's cold outside. As we read this, of course, on page 10 and 11 of the 208-page document that I did review today. Lightning, civil unrest, I think these terms need to be defined. And then, of course, in this case, the potential of arrest for people that don't comply, and even the limitation of individuals that leave their properties voluntarily that may not be allowed to return to their properties, although leaving voluntarily. And so my recommendation is that we take some time, look at this a little more carefully. I will admit, I should have been paying careful attention to this long ago. I've noticed that this is something that is at a state level. It has already been signed by the county. I've talked with the county officials today and pointed some of these things out to them, and they recognize right away that we've got some problems here. And so inasmuch as this is now going to come into the city, I saw it on the front page. I want to thank Bill Bewley and the Coeur d'Alene Press for bringing it to my attention. And so I would love to have you take some time, discuss this, bring some better clarity and definition before we potentially violate the constitutional rights of our people. Thank you for your time.
thank you, Paul. Appreciate those comments. Oh. All right. Any other comments? Hearing none, moving along. City council announcements.
After you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to follow up from last episode. There was a thing the water department was going to do regarding a chemical process to make chlorine, and I had a question about the byproducts of that, which would have been, according to my primitive understanding of chemistry, would have been sodium. But after talking with Glenn at the water department, actually emailing him and getting more information from the vendor, it turns out it's not really salt that they're converting, it's something else. And so while there are byproducts created, that's not the nasty stuff that I thought it might be. And I just wanted to thank the water department for following up on that, and I wanted to follow up with you guys to let you know that everything is cool at the water department. Thank you.
And the water's still good to drink. Kenny?
Well, the good news is Santa Claus is indeed coming to town, but he's coming to town in a great big well-lit fire truck. And Tom, if I don't mean to put you on the spot, but they started yesterday? This evening they start, and they start on the south end of town, head north. They do their absolute best to hit every street they can, but they can't. And I can speak for myself, I can't speak for Chief Greif, but the most complaints I ever got by a long shot was people saying, you drove past my house, my kids couldn't see the fire truck. So go to Santa Tractor, and it is where? What website is Santa Tracker on? Okay. .org. So go to that, and it's a great thing, and it's a great partnership between the city and the local 710. They do a great job. Now, folks that know me know I'm really not a social media guy, but I found something out on Facebook this last week, and that is our city has been named one of the 20 most beautiful cities in the nation. And I would like to, yes. And personal liberty is, I do believe that we're one of the safest cities in the country as well, and I would like to thank the fire and police departments for their diligence. We're going to hear some stuff tonight about that, and I'm very proud of what they do. I want to take this time to thank this council for wisdom and great decision-making to keep this a beautiful, vibrant city, and the councils that have come before us. And I really want to thank our staff for the great work they do every day, and they're not in the limelight, but they do a great job, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Thanks, Kenny. I'm all pumped up now.
Yeah.
Kiki.
Just real quick, I wanted to let council and the community know that there is a feasibility study, I've mentioned it before, that Home Share Kootenai County is putting out. And what that study is doing is finding out if the community is interested in a grant program where a citizen could request funds to retrofit their home in exchange for housing a student, teacher, or healthcare worker for a commensurate amount of time. So that survey is at housingni.org. It's about 6 questions long, and we're holding that open until next Monday. So take a second and fill out that survey, and we'll see if we can do more to get folks who need a place to live and folks who could use a little extra income or a little extra help, a place to live in 2025. Thanks. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all.
Thanks, Kiki. Anything? Moving on? All right, look for, I have nothing other than Merry Christmas. It's weird being here, but I'm getting the hang of it. You guys are doing good by not yelling at me all the time. I like that.
Not all the time.
So I'm learning this job. It's, the best parts are like doing a picture with the kids and getting to travel around. I got to go in the high rises that are being built with the building inspector, a different perspective on life. I hung out with the guy who fixes everything today, and all the things they can do from electrical to construction, and I just appreciate having the time to kind of jump in and travel around and see all the different pieces. Got to go out with code enforcement. That was an interesting perspective. Looking forward to the dog catcher. Animal control. Going to ride with them, and hopefully I'm going to ride with Santa. They're trying to talk me into being a Santa helper on the truck. So it's been fun being mayor so far, and again, still learning. And I appreciate all the support from you guys and all the staff and things. And I do wish you a Merry Christmas. Moving on. We have consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented, including resolution number 24-097.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all those, roll call, please.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Resolution 24098, adoption of the Kootenai County Emergency Operations Plan. Tom Grief, the fire chief, and we've got a couple other people from the Office of Emergency Management here. Tom, take it away.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Before I get started, I'd just like to thank everyone for the opportunity this evening, as we have 2 important agenda items before you for your consideration tonight. The first staff report you have is for your consideration to adopt the new Kootenai County Emergency Operations Plan that was updated this last August. This is an all hazards approach to emergency management. It's intended to guide our community just not during an emergency, but also before and after an emergency or disaster occurs in our community. Please keep in mind that these operations plans are only as good as the entities contained in them and the active participation from all the entities within them. As you see, this is a 208-page document that I'm sure everybody read through last weekend. So I believe it used to be 500 pages, so it's shrunk down quite a bit. But being its 200-page document, I felt that it was prudent to invite Kootenai County Office of Emergency Management here to do a presentation for you all this evening. So with that, I'd like to introduce Tiffany Westbrook. She's the director of Kootenai County OEM. And she has a brief presentation for you, and I'm confident that she'll be able to answer any questions or concerns that you have following that. So I'd like to invite Tiffany up to the podium.
Thanks, Chief.
Good
Welcome.
evening. So as Chief mentioned, my name's Tiffany Westbrook. I am the director for Kootenai County Emergency Management. I've been the director for the past 5 years. Today I'm here to talk to you about the Emergency Operations Plan and for you to contemplate the adoption for the City of Coeur d'Alene. This plan was last updated in 2018, at which point the City of Coeur d'Alene did sign the previous plan. As Chief mentioned, the 2018 plan was a 500-page document. We spent a lot of time working with our stakeholders in this community to do this plan. One, internally, we did not hire a contractor because we wanted a plan that reflected our community and was effective and efficient for our response efforts. And two, we wanted something that was meaningful. So through that process, I'll talk about our planning process in a little bit, but it was a multi-stakeholder process over a 9-month period. We started this process back in September of 2023, and we provided opportunity for members to be involved, the community as well, through our local emergency planning committee, which is a public meeting that takes place on a quarterly basis to provide input. And then obviously we work with relevant subject matter experts for the development of the plan. So today I'm going to talk through some aspects of the plan, if I can get this thing to work. So first and foremost, what is the EOC purpose? I guess this is going to be fun. The EOC purpose is a guide to help agencies and organizations respond to a disaster beyond normal response. So keep that in mind. This plan is not going to be leveraged for your day-to-day response efforts. This plan is going to be leveraged when there is something that exceeds the City of Coeur d'Alene's ability, and they need to lean in on the partnerships as outlined in the plan to help provide them with resources or means to help respond to that incident to limit the impacts. Because at the end of the day, all of us care about our community returning to normal after a disaster or emergency. The plan also it highlights the awareness of resources and responsibilities that exist. So we have a list of specific resources that could be leveraged should they need to be. And we also highlight general roles and responsibilities and response actions that might be taken if this plan were to be leveraged. It's also important that this plan doesn't have any additional authority to it. It doesn't take authority away from the City of Coeur d'Alene, and it doesn't impose anything onto them. It's simply illustrating the framework that we're operating in and how we can partner with our response partners and our community members and our nonprofit organizations to, again, help us return to a state of normal in the most efficient and effective way, in the most timely manner for the benefit of our citizens. So why do we have an EOP? Well, it is dictated in Idaho Code 461009 that as the emergency manager for the county, I create this document, and then I have an obligation to present it to all the participating jurisdictions within the county. So that's why this plan has been presented to you for you to contemplate your adoption. It is also a requirement for EMPG funding. EMPG funding is Emergency Managed Performance Grant Funds. The county receives those on an annual basis, and they go into things like some of you may recall this past summer we hosted a full-scale exercise up at Timberlake for our response members to practice their response to an active shooter incident. We also host trainings and exercise on a regular basis, and this is all for multi-agency and multi-jurisdictional participation to increase our ability to respond. And as I mentioned again, it facilitates that multi-jurisdictional and interagency coordination. So through the plan and outlining the roles and responsibilities individuals may have in the plan, it allows us to come to the table and have these conversations to understand if there is a shortcoming or something we need to work on because fire has a really good job at understanding what fire does. Law has a really good job at understanding what law does. Our nonprofit organizations have a really good understanding of what they can bring to the table, but sometimes we don't come to the table collectively to have those conversations. So this plan's intention is to bring all of that together, have the conversations, understand how we can support each other in a way that is meaningful for our community in times of disasters and emergencies. So speaking about the plan development, I mentioned that this plan began under development in September of 2023. We put out an all-call in July of 2023 to provide an opportunity for people to be on the planning team. The planning team consisted of a core group of people, of various subject matter experts from public health, law enforcement, fire, emergency management, and communications. We also provided an opportunity anytime we updated a specific annex that for civil unrest, for example, we brought in subject matter experts who that may pertain to, so we could have an understanding of what those response elements might look like and get their feedback. So obviously for civil unrest, we invited more law enforcement to the table for that. So this was a collaborative effort. We did our best to understand that situation, determine the goals and the objectives of the plan, and then we moved through the planning process. We provided an opportunity for comment on the final draft of the plan back in July of 2024, and then in August of 2024 of this year, and then we presented it to the Board of Commission, and then we proceeded with presenting it to all of the participating fire jurisdictions and municipalities within Kootenai County. So it was definitely not planned in a silo. It's also important to understand that this plan is a working document. It can be edited or changed to reflect the needs of our community. But again, I come back to that point where this plan does not dictate anything additional to the city of Coeur d'Alene or any signatory, and it does not increase the liability of the city of Coeur d'Alene in any way, as the memo that accompanied the plan highlighted. So I just want to talk about kind of the core aspects of this plan and how it's divvied up. So the base plan is the foundation of the plan. The base plan talks about a lot of concepts specific to emergency management, but also disaster response. It talks about the concept of operations, specific roles and responsibilities. It highlights those ESFs, emergency support functions. And then it has additional appendices where we talk about decision making. And in that section, we cover how a disaster declaration is leveraged, what that process looks like, how we leverage it up through the various places, and then what additional things can open up through a disaster declaration process. It also talks about how the Emergency Operations Center can be activated. For those of you who do not know, we have a new Emergency Operations Center that is up by the airport that is able to be stood up to support our community at any time should there be a need. And it talks about how you can do a partial activation, a level 1 activation, a level 2, a level 3. So it kind of talks about what that looks like and how we interface with it. And then it does touch on our training and exercise. So as I mentioned, we use EMPG funds and other things to conduct multi-agency exercise opportunities. We develop a training and exercise program on an annual basis. We conduct an integrated preparedness planning workshop where we talk about what the needs are, what the capability gaps are, and we bring in trainings to address those, and then those things can translate into informing the plan or making an update in the plan as well. So after the base plan, we move into the ESF section of the plan. The ESF stands for Emergency Support Functions. The 2018 plan was broken up as an agency-based plan. As Kootenai County has grown, we saw a need to transition to an ESF. The reason we transitioned to an ESF is because it's common language in disaster response, and it's utilized at the state and federal level, so we wanted to be consistent. In order to understand what an ESF is, I'll give you a quick example. For example, ESF 13 is our public safety and security. So under ESF 13, you would see all of the law enforcement agencies represented in Kootenai County, and I'll show that here on this page. You can see it would say associated agencies. So we'll look at ESF 4, which is firefighting. It lists the federal, the state, and the districts within Kootenai County and municipalities who participate in that ESF, and then resources and agreements. This is not going to be a comprehensive list of resources and agreements throughout the entire county. It is going to be a list of resources and agreements above and beyond day-to-day operations. What I mean by that is you wouldn't see a list of every tender or fire truck that CDA Fire has, because that's for their day-to-day operations. But we would list something if it would be beneficial to response that would be beyond that. So for example, you see a few listed right there. There's a mass casualty incident unit that we have within the county, the BNSF Fire, trained through one of our private partners in LifeFlight. So this is a working document, so if more resources or agreements become available, we will update this to reflect that. The next aspect of the plan is our incident annexes. So our incident annexes are bookended by general actions and recovery. The general actions kind of speaks for itself, but it generally applies to all of those. Those are things that would remain consistent regardless of the type of incident it is. And then it's bookended by recovery because each one of these incidents is going to require a certain type of recovery effort to occur. So when we were creating which incident annexes that were going to exist in the plan, we looked at the 2020 All Hazard Mitigation Plan risk assessment, and we determined which one the Kootenai County interfaces with a more frequent basis. From there, we whittled it down to the ones we felt that was appropriate, and we created incident annexes to support that. The incident annexes look a little bit like this. They have a quick brief on roles and responsibilities. It's broken up by ESF function, and then it has an associated task list of maybe some general actions that may transpire in that incident. So this is for ESF 4, wildland fire annex. You'd see fire listed and maybe some response actions that may accompany a wildland fire incident. Again, this is not something that has to occur. This is just to orient our stakeholders and our partners to say this generally is where we're coming from and this is the framework we're working in. So it is by no means an all-inclusive list, nor should it be. It is simply just to start the conversation, have an understanding of how we will interface with all of our partners. And then lastly, we have our support annexes. So our support annexes are larger aspects that can again touch multiple types of incidents. For example, we have an evacuation support annex that touches on the different types of evacuations, when they may be leveraged and who has the authority to leverage them. Alerts and warnings is another incident annex that obviously touches a lot, so it needed to be expanded upon, where we talk about how we leverage alerts and warnings in Kootenai County, the difference between an alert originator and alerting authority, what that means, and an alert originator actually has the ability to issue an alert, where an alert authority just has the ability to say, I want to send out an alert. They can't physically do it. So knowing those things matters. So we also list who has the ability to physically send out an alert in Kootenai County. To expand on that, this is the alerts and warnings annex. It has associated tasks similar. It goes over the scope. But to expand on that a little bit, under the alerts and warnings annex, you'll see the notification process about how we leverage notifications in Kootenai County. Generally, an incident occurs. That primary agency requests the alert through OEM or 911 Central Dispatch. Those are the two ways. The primary agency provides alert content, so that means expected action, what the threat is, and who it's coming from. That alert is sent through the appropriate channels, and then the public receives that notification. When you're talking about appropriate channels, it's important to understand that there's various means in which we can send out a notification, and the incident typically dictates what alert is initiated. So if you look at our chart, which is found on page 142 of the EOP, it talks about the different types of alerting methods that could be utilized in an emergency. Obviously, at the very bottom, we have door-to-door notifications. So that is, it's an imminent situation, and we need people to get notified quickly, and we're knocking on doors and notifying them of the situation. There's other means we can do, which is message boards. We can notify people through, some of you may be familiar with the ITD message boards. We can contact StateCom for that. And then obviously one of the more common ones is media releases and social media. Anytime we initiate an evacuation in Kootenai County, we always subsequently share that on social media, and we update our websites simultaneously. Other alert channels include Nixle, but the most common one I want to point out is Alert Kootenai. And if you're not registered for Alert Kootenai, I would strongly recommend you do that. Alert Kootenai is the public-facing alert notification system that we have in Kootenai County. That is how we push out alerts through our 911 Central Dispatch. You can register for that on the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office website. It'll direct you there. There's two other types of alerts and warnings that can be leveraged, and these require specific circumstances for us to interface with them, and that is for the WIA and the EAS. A WIA is a wireless emergency alert, and that means there has to be an imminent threat to life, safety, or property. In a WIA, we have the ability to draw a polygon on a map of where the disaster area is or the emergency area is, and then send out that alert to people in that area, regardless of them being registered for the system or not. Because how that works is it pings cell towers, and it sends out the notification through the cell tower. So if you're driving through an area that's impacted, you'll receive that alert. And then the next step that we has specific guardrails on how you interface with it is the emergency alert system, so an EAS, and that allows us to do broadcasting through TV, radio, NOAA weather radios, and radio in general. So those are some of the ways that we alert. We obviously have a wide array of how we leverage any notifications or alerts and warnings, but again, it's dictated one, by the needs of the incidents, but two, by the request of the incident commander. So an incident commander or somebody with an alert or warning authority has to make that request, and then we determine what means makes best sense based off of the incident that we're handling at the time. So I know this might have seemed really quick, and I understand it's a 206-page document, but over the past 9 months, we reduced that, from 500 pages to 206, and it means for it to be more meaningful and straightforward. I hope this helped provide some clarity, and I am more than willing to stand for any questions you might have regarding the plan.
Thanks, Tiffany. Questions? Mr. Gookin?
I'll head it up. Thank you. Tiffany, you said this plan is required by Idaho code, but what about the contents of the plan, the responses, some of the stuff that was mentioned by Pastor Paul, limited immunity, commandeer equipment, my concern over people being arrested, is that in state code?
Yeah, so the limited immunity can be found in Idaho Code 46-1017, which touches on the immunity in disaster situations under the Preparedness Act. So you can find more of that, but it basically, I can read it for you if you'd like me to, or, okay. And then regarding evacuations, that is also dictated under Idaho State Code 46-1008, and that is only being mentioned in the situation of a governor-ordered evacuation. So just to draw some information for that, the 2023 wildfire season, that was a big one for us. We issued evacuations on 3 different fires, some requiring immediate go activation notification, some requiring get ready, but various. The types of evacuations that we order in Kootenai County from our level of government is always voluntary. The only time an evacuation would be mandatory is if it is issued by the governor. And that is in that Idaho Code 46-1008, where he has the ability to direct and compel the evacuation of all or part of the population from any stricken or threatened area. So that was the intent of that, was just to signal the types of evacuations that exist in the state of Idaho and how they might be interfaced with.
Is it our choice, or the county's choice, I guess, because this isn't ours, is it the county's choice to adopt those items, or are they mandated in the statutes?
I guess I'm confused by your question.
So you have the limited immunity you mentioned is in Idaho statutes. When we adopt or the county adopts the emergency plan here, is it mandated in that statute that it be a part of the plan?
I don't know if it's mandated, but I don't think that the intent of having it in there is to, again, this doesn't add any additional restrictions to the city of Coeur d'Alene, 1. And 2, the intent is to illustrate the framework that exists. And part of that framework are the things that are noted in Idaho State Code. So I don't think it would be a fully informed plan if we didn't provide access to that information.
Boy, that's a great answer that I don't understand, but I appreciate your energy. So
basically what I'm saying is if something's dictated in state code or wrote in state code regarding an emergency, chapter 10 of the Idaho Disaster Preparedness Act, and it says that this is what the state can do. We interface with the state in emergency situations. If we have an incident that impacts Kootenai County and we need to leverage it for a state disaster declaration, we're working with those partners. So the reason it would be mentioned in the plan is because it's part of that framework of emergency response. It's part of the framework of how we interface with our partners.
Do we have to?
No.
Good, that's the question I wanted.
No.
The answer, that's the answer I wanted. If we don't have to do it, then it doesn't have to be in the plan. We can do a plan that shows how we're going to respond to an emergency, but we don't necessarily have to have something in that plan that says we're going to commandeer private property or that we're going to arrest people.
But the plan is not saying that those things will occur. The plan is saying that may occur through the governor's orders. So again, when you're referencing the specific aspect of the plan that mentions somebody who refused to evacuate under a governor mandated order may be arrested, it's simply referencing what code allows for. It's not saying we will do that at all, because I would take that to say that the ability to carry that out would require the participation of local law enforcement, and that's a conversation I'm not willing to provide any insight on because that's up to their jurisdiction and their direction.
Right. It should be up to the elected officials, too. You understand that you're coming into this right on the heels of what I think is the greatest abuse of government power in the history of this country, which is the COVID fiasco.
I totally understand that, and I respect where the concerns are. This plan is not, again, to impose anything upon anyone. It's simply to signal the framework that we're working within. That's why it doesn't provide any additional authority to the county or any signatory. It's just saying these are the partnerships exist, these are the things to keep in mind, this is how we're going to interface with people, and this is why this and all of this matters, because we want to be able to respond to disasters in the most effective and efficient way
And leading
possible.
up to the mandates and the lockdowns, we were told that that was not going to happen. So you got to understand the optics of where you're coming
I
from.
totally understand. I totally understand it.
Amy?
Let me just maybe word this a little differently. First of all, great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me verify this. If we move to adopt this plan, the governor's orders still stand, and we have a path to work together through this plan. If we move to not adopt this plan, the governor's orders still stand, and we are eliminating that path that effectively helps protect our citizens and move us forward if needed with the governor.
You're not having a seat at the table to have these discussions with us in a meaningful way to figure out how we can make plans that more represent our community. So,
But either way, the governor's orders still stand.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Thank you. Number one, I think people should always question authority. I don't have an issue with that at all. There's appropriate places to do that. A council meeting is a place to do it. A court of law, not the side of the road when you're getting a lawful order to exit your vehicle by a police officer. So I don't have an issue with that, but I think people need to understand, this is not a tactical plan.
It
This is
states
not-
that in the plan. It's not tactical
Yeah.
nor operational.
No, and I'm retired law enforcement, I'm a retired fire chief, we've worked with the OC in natural disasters, so this doesn't offend me or concern me at all. I know why we do it. After 9/11, everyone figured out we weren't communicating with each other and we were putting people at risk. And so I would like to, I have a few more things to say on this, but at this point in time, I'd like to bring up our chief, Lee White, to discuss his thoughts on this plan and our role as a city.
Of course.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I guess there's a couple things I'll say about this. From my perspective, this whole plan is about coordination and resource management in a big emergency. Directly towards a couple comments that were in the paper and said today, the Coeur d'Alene Police Department has zero intention of going and forcing people from their homes and throwing them in handcuffs if they're refusing to leave. That's not something we do. The governor can order that there is a mandatory evacuation in place. Look, there's similar laws that occur in states throughout the U.S. You guys have, I'm sure, just recently heard about hurricanes that occurred down in Florida. There was a mandatory evacuation order in place. There was a whole bunch of people who didn't leave. They didn't then leave in handcuffs with the local police department when they refused to leave. That's not something we do. We don't kick in doors and take people in handcuffs out of their homes if they're going to refuse to leave. The other aspects of it that were addressed, there was one about preventing people from coming back into an area. I guess there might be a limited circumstance, although I don't really foresee this happening in a city our size, but where it might occur. In 2013, there was the Yarnell Hill fire that we were requested for my city team to respond and provide security to. That Yarnell Hill fire occurred in a small town up in Arizona, and 19 firefighters died fighting that fire. Our team was requested to go up and provide security for a couple of reasons. Number one, the huge amount of resources that were in this very small town and very small avenues of ingress and egress to get those apparatus and things like that in and out. And then secondarily, because of the threat that we had from looters coming into the area and taking everything out of people's homes when they were still evacuated. But as soon as the incident commander said it was safe to do so, people were let back in. Once again, I can't see something like that happening in a city our size. I really don't. So the short answer is the Coeur d'Alene Police Department has no intention of removing people from their homes. Remember, this is the part that's causing so much consternation here is one sentence out of a 200-page document that appears on page 163 of that document. And it says the The governor may issue an order, and if that happens, those persons who refuse to comply with the governor-ordered evacuation may be arrested. The discretion still falls on us and the individual officers out there as to whether or not to make that arrest, and I can foresee no circumstances under which that occurs in Coeur d'Alene.
Thank you. I think that's very appropriate.
Any questions for the chief while he's here?
Oh, I would, sure, and just to, again, reframe as I understand this, first of all, well, of course, first of all, it's to protect life and property of people, why this exists and all of this work. And again, the real triggering thing is if it's something big enough where the governor issues, the governor's proclamation, then that kind of opens a door to some things. But the local police still, have their discretion, and when you come down to it, they're still going to exercise that discretion like they do all of the time, and I trust them, and they've been trained. I guess part of what I hear in terms of we are, part of our job is to safeguard the city resources, and that also means, frankly, the city pocketbook. And the way I'm understanding this, maybe our attorney can chime in, but if we said, oh no, forget this, that provides us some certain, that limited immunity, that if you did have to do something and somebody, they're still going to save a life or do something, if we're following the rules and everything, then we have that protection like we do in other situations where it's built in to have, some kind of protection for the people who are doing it, like somebody does, CPR or something like that. There's a whole range of things. So, nobody wants the image of, you can't come in or, going to do anything. And I would guess with the commandeering, when I think of within the city of Coeur d'Alene, maybe out in the county, but actually way back when I had a little stint in law enforcement, and one time actually there was a situation with a stolen car and some fugitives, and Larry House, who was the resident deputy at Hayden for a long time, went to the airport and said, I need to commandeer one of your planes and your pilots, and they put us in the air, and they were happy to do it, and you go do that. And I would guess if somebody had something that, boy, you need that to, they'd do that. So, anyway, yeah.
You touched on an important topic there. First of all, I would say this. I've been a cop for 31 years. I've never commandeered anything. I don't think that's something we do anymore. And secondly, you hit on the topic of discretion. There's laws on the books that officers have the discretion whether or not to make an arrest or write a report or take any action that we exercise daily. We don't cite everyone who's going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. There's a law in the books here in Idaho that says you can't carry a cane that's white in color if you're not blind. We don't go around arresting people simply because they have a white stick. I guess that's just a poor example, but just because a law appears and we have the ability to do something doesn't mean that we're mandated to do that. And this is one example of that. I don't see us going and removing people from their structures if they're choosing to not evacuate during an emergency.
Kenny?
We are the ones that have to ask for the declaration. The governor won't come in and automatically to do that. That has to go through us and then to the county, correct?
That's correct.
And also, that declaration is very important to us because it's tied to funding.
Yes, it is.
So those are two very big things that I think we need to remember. And Paul, you had some points about what is a emergency. I think what they did is they just do this broad brush. And have we ever had a hail emergency? I do not believe we have. Could we? Maybe we could. Cold's a big one because if we're popping sprinklers everywhere and we're flooding everything, that will very quickly, it'll overwhelm us. So I think that they don't get specific, that's just a big broad brush, if that helps at all.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just finish up with first responders are doing everything they can to preserve life in an emergency. So what I would hope when we're saying our prayers, we're saying them for our first responders and thanking them for all that they do. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. Other thoughts, comments?
Yes.
Mr. Gookin?
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for Tiffany again.
I thought I was off.
No. Tiffany, if what happens if all of a sudden the county commissioners, Duncan and Matari, who signed this document up front, what happens if they change their mind and decide to redo it?
It's a living document, and we can contemplate any changes that are presented. I mean, there's always a conversation for that. Like I did mention, though, this plan development took place over 9 months of partnership with the stakeholders in our community.
Yeah,
So again,
you said that, but I know that Pastor Paul, if it is a man of his word, is going to be contacting them, and I think there might be a review sometime in the future.
I welcome that. I would love to have community involvement in these plans, because again, these plans are only as informed or useful as the participation of our
Cool.
first
So what happens
responders
if we adopt it and then it goes back and the county decides to relook
There
at
is a
it?
page in the plan that has a spot for records of revisions and changes, and we will note that change and update that change where it was made in the plan and provide the updated copy on our website.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, if nobody else. Is this similar to, say, different counties in Idaho? Do you guys use the same format? Would it look like the same piece of paper?
It's different. It differs. The ability of emergency management in counties across the state it varies. Some have part-time emergency managers, some require contracting for those services. We had the ability to formulate this plan in-house through our partnerships, and that was great. So it varies, but the content and the heart of them are similar, yes.
Questions? Kiki?
Just a final. Tiffany, what happens in a situation of conflict? And what I mean is over the content of the plan. So one jurisdiction says, I want the word commandeer taken out, and the other 7 say, we're fine with it.
That's why it took 9 months.
That's why it took 9 months.
Yeah, so
you've
those
already
conversations,
wordsmithed
yes,
this.
and obviously the areas that were picked up, like, those are open for conversation of how we can maybe wordsmith and change things to be more palatable for individuals. But it's a process, and we take that feedback and we try to come up with a product, and then we go back to the drawing boards and we come up with something else. So it happens regularly. Our hope and intent now is, as I mentioned, the overhaul of the plan occurs every 5 years, and we'll be reviewing these annually. So on that time, we'll reach out, and if there's ever an incident that occurs, and say we learned something really valuable from that response effort, that we can then take that information and inform the plan to reflect the things we learned from those incidents.
And so, just so I'm clear in the final of this is a template outline that requires participation and buy-in from everyone in our county.
Yes.
So in this event of something that's catastrophic,
Yeah.
we have the ability to respond to everybody's benefit with all resources in one area.
Yeah, and I will say, being with emergency management in Kootenai County for 7 years now, the partnerships that we have here are one of a kind. We truly have a willingness to interface and work with each other in a way that I haven't seen elsewhere. So we have a leg up there. This plan just kind of formalizes some of those conversations and makes it meaningful to where our partners, if they bring in a new fire trainee or a new law enforcement trainee, they can say, hey, look at this and see if you have any questions and understand that landscape that we're operating from.
Great. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Chief Greif is here. I don't know if he wanted to make a couple of comments.
I just wanted to close a little bit on the staff report that is before you. So we always want to remain sensitive to the community's questions and concerns, and so I hope that this evening Stephanie and Chief White answered some of the questions that may have come from this morning's article. I know those were a concern. I can vouch for, years ago when this plan was 500 pages and Councilman Gabriel, it was a 500-page document that was completed just to meet a requirement, and it went on a shelf and collected dust. And I can tell you that just working with Stephanie and her team now, that shrinking this down to a plan that it's just as important to learn it. As an elected, I think you would want the police chief and myself to learn this plan so that we can guide you through it when there's a disaster, because it's not something you're going to do every day. So it's really important that we learn this plan, we practice it, we test it, so that if we ever have to implement it, we're not dusting it off and trying to learn it in present time. So that's important, that living document, and like I said earlier, the entities contained in the plan are just as important. They have to be active and, share resources. That's what I think brings value to this community by implementing this plan. So part of my staff report was asking for your consideration to adopt this. And like I said, I want to remain sensitive to the community's needs, concerns that came out from the article this morning. So I'm hoping that the questions were answered tonight. And so there was a recommendation by myself and Chief White to adopt this in the staff report.
Thanks, Chief.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-098 to approve the adoption of the Kootenai County Emergency Operations Plan.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Gookin.
Thank you for recognizing me without looking up. You're getting good at this.
I caught you out of the corner of my eye.
You're getting good. I cannot support this until it contains language that protects people's rights, and it's absent right now. Chief White mentioned the law that we have in Idaho, apparently, where if you carry a white stick, that you can be arrested unless you're blind. And I really believe that the person who pushed that law and passed it down in Boise was absolutely passionate about it because it would help public safety. And it will never cease to surprise me how many times in this country we have elected officials who say public safety comes before people's rights. We saw it in 2020, and we're seeing it now. And I cannot support this document until it contains language that protects people's rights. That's what I swore an oath to when I'm sitting up here. We all did. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Christie.
You know I really like my libertarian friend very much. I think it's just a matter of interpretation of the law, and what I see as following Idaho code, you may see as not respecting people's rights. I just see it completely different. I see it from a first responder's perspective, is all we want to do is help people, and it doesn't mean we want to take your rights away from you. We want to be able to respond appropriately and to the best of our ability, and we do that by having these comprehensive plans that for decades, law enforcement and fire never worked together like we should to protect people. It's not about taking away your liberties. It's about preserving life when it's critical. So I respect his point of view very much. I always have. I think he questions authority in an appropriate way. I just don't see the world the same way.
Mr. Mayor, may I just point out that Idaho statute does do that. Idaho Code 461008, subsection 7 says, during the continuance of any state of disaster emergency, neither the governor nor any agency of any governmental entity or political subdivision shall, goes on, otherwise limit or suspend any rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution or the Constitution of the state of Idaho, including, but not limited to, the right to peaceably assemble or free exercise of religion. That's subsection 7.
Any other comments?
Just,
Dan?
well, this, like many things we do, is a balancing act. And I'm going to vote for this. I think overall it does what we need to do, and I think it's in the community's best interest. Also, I'm comforted, reassured by the fact that, the county director has told us that this is an active living thing. The county is already getting some input, and for people who, like Pastor Paul said, hadn't tuned into this, well, now there's a front page article. Now we'll have this. There'll probably be some follow-up media on this. And so people, dig in there and give feedback to the county, give it to us. And they said they, update it annually. And I would guess if there was enough of something, they could probably do it before then. But I think we're on the right track. And again, it's balancing. And so I can support this.
All right. More discussion. I look for a roll call, please.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Gookin,
No.
English,
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, Council Bill 241020, repealing municipal code firefighter equipment rooms and adopting a whole bunch of new stuff.
What is with that mouse?
Bill DeRider, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm here to present repealing the current firefighter room, do it? Yeah. The firefighter room ordinance for high-rises and replace it with the FARS ordinance. FARS is the firefighter air replenishment system. We're going to show a little video right now that'll explain this a lot better than I can. So.
Firefighters need two essential things to respond to fires in big buildings and rescue the people inside: air and water. Without water, firefighters can't extinguish the blaze. Without air, firefighters won't survive in the toxic, smoky environment. We solve the problem of water delivery by requiring the installation of water standpipes for fire hoses. These are required in all big buildings. But the delivery of air bottles continued to be done the old-fashioned way, by hand. A group of firefighters, known as an air bottle brigade, would be assigned to carry replacement air bottles up numerous flights of stairs to fire crews on upper floors. It is a slow and difficult process, made even more challenging by the hot, smoky conditions and the 100 pounds of equipment firefighters must wear as they climb. And an air bottle only lasts 15 to 25 minutes, so fire crews need a lot of them. Carrying air bottles upstairs takes trained firefighters away from critical tasks like fire attack and search and rescue. When seconds matter, more crews fighting the fire saves lives and property. There's a better way. A firefighter air replenishment system, also called FARS. A FARS is a standpipe for air, which allows firefighters to refill their air bottles inside a building at fill stations located all the way to the roof. And they can do it in 2 minutes or less, under full respiration. Air is supplied by the fire department's mobile air unit, from a supply of air stored in the building, or both. The air in FARS is tested regularly, and in a recent study of FARS air samples, the air quality exceeded NFPA standards. What's more, because this is a building-installed system, FARS doesn't impact city budgets. Buildings are getting larger. Cities are getting denser. But fire department budgets are not getting bigger. That's why cities in 19 states are requiring FARS, and the list is growing. Long ago, the water standpipe replaced hauling buckets. The air standpipe replaces hauling air bottles. Firefighters and the citizens they protect need FARS.
Sorry about the volume on that. Get the gist of what the FARS system is. Put up our PowerPoint here. Okay, so what is FARS? FARS is like the video said, it's just a standpipe system for air. So many years ago, we put in standpipes, put in sprinkler systems, but now they've come up with an air system, or a pipe for air, which helps us. The definition of the code, or the NFPA Appendix L, I'm not going to read that to you, but again, it's just the pipeline for air. Okay, go ahead. Currently, the firefighter room ordinance was passed by council in 2006. It's a 16 square foot room constructed with 2-hour protection on every 5th floor, and it stages firefighter equipment: bottles, SCBA bottles, extra nozzles, and hose. So why do we need to change the ordinance? This is some pictures of what our city is turning into. We're having high rises built. We're getting more dense. So right now, in our firefighter rooms, the SCBA bottles, they're tested every 5 years, replaced every 15. Hoses tested every year and replaced if found defective. Nozzles and other equipment replaced as needed. And there's currently no plan to replace the expired equipment. It'll fall onto the fire department's budget. So this is Morgan. She's one of our firefighters. Picture here shows the gear that she wears and all the equipment she's going to have to carry up to whatever floor we're going to stage this equipment on. So she has 100 pounds of gear on just by herself, and then with extra bottles and hose, Morgan right there can basically weigh 300 pounds. So she's got to carry that up the stairwells in these. And so by putting in the FARs, we're depleting the need to carry the SCBA bottles to the floors for staging. Here's some pictures of what the staging room would look like. All the SCBA bottles, full, empty, all the hoses brought up. So some advantages of FARs. FARs, again, is a cascade system, or it could be supplemented from the fire department air truck on the outside. The cascade system supplies air enough to fill 50 bottles before the fire department air unit arrives to then hook into that system and continue to supply air that we need in bottles. We don't have to have the bottle brigade anymore going up and down, which will deplete the county if we have to call for mutual aid to come in as well. So again, staged equipment, it's every 5th floor. We have to use the bottle brigade, depletes the county, and then there's no avenue for us to replace that equipment right now. It'll just come out of our budget. The more buildings that get built, the more rooms that have to be supplied. Here's a picture of the air monitoring system. Another picture what the cascade system will look like. The picture on the left is a standalone system that waits for the fire department to come and hook in their truck or their air trailer to supply the air to the system. Here's a picture of a pedestal outside of one of the high rises that the firefighters hook in their air truck into to supply air to the rest of the building. There's a picture of our trailer that we currently have. The picture on the bottom is Meridian's air truck. 3 cities in Idaho have adopted the FARs. Meridian was the first one, Boise just approved it, and Nampa's the third. These are the fill ports that are in the stairwells. Firefighters don't have to take their bottles off or hold their breath while you're trying to replace that bottle with a new fresh bottle. They can just plug in, they're still breathing good air out of that bottle, and then it's being refilled from the system. Cost comparison. Right now, it's cost about $75,000. That could go up to supply those rooms of all the equipment. Johnson Controls, they're the ones that own this system, and they did a study, and the cost is between 0.5% to 1.85% total cost of the project itself. So they were telling us if you go about 1% is what it would cost the developer. Any questions?
Well, this is kind of a cool vote for me because I'm the one that brought the firefighter rooms forward. So they got in the way of the dodo bird. And at that time, it was the only option we had. And it's great, and I am so proud and appreciative that you're finding new technology that makes life better. 2 quick questions. One is, who's in charge of maintenance of the system?
The building.
And that will be put into, how will that be written?
So it's a fire protective system, just like a sprinkler and alarm.
Speak into the mic, please.
It's a fire protective system, just like a fire alarm or a sprinkler system, and so it would fall under the adoption of the fire code and the maintenance of the fire protection systems.
Perfect, perfect. And for Bill, on a high-rise fire right there, how many people would it take, just in the ballpark?
If we get a full structure, we're going to have at least 42 people.
And how many people are on duty in Kootenai County at one time?
Less than that.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Gookin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Councilman Gabriel asked a really good question, but I have a follow-up on that one too, which is, what's the procedure for testing this equipment? Make sure it works when you need it.
Currently?
No, I mean so you get
the
this.
FARs.
Yeah, you get this FARs in there. You're going to test it, right? You don't want these guys coming up there and sucking on nothing, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, it gets tested just like once a quarter.
Okay.
For just like our SCBA bottles, just like our compressor system.
And it's not pressurized then, is it?
It is.
All the time?
Yes.
So
that's how it's monitored.
Okay.
So if it springs a leak, then it sets off an alarm just like a sprinkler system.
Okay, so you don't have to pressurize it when you show up then. Okay, good. Will you be needing new SCABA equipment to be compatible with this? Not at all. So it works with all our existing stuff. And here's a question for you. So, and I remember the fire closet thing and getting that ordinance in there. Why get rid of them? Why not keep them? Isn't there something down the road you could use for them if you still have them?
Yeah, so Right now, Parkside has rooms, but it was being built when the ordinance was being passed, and so it didn't fall into the ordinance being passed. So we have rooms with no equipment in Parkside. We have rooms that were improperly built at One Lakeside, and it just doesn't work for what we were looking for, and quite honestly, we were looking to essentially trade some real estate back to a business owner who we're then going to go forward and ask them to purchase a system that's likely going to cost more than doing the firefighter rooms, but we wanted to give them square footage back, which is dollars to their project.
Okay, that seems fair, and that makes sense then. So does, you mentioned Parkside, does One Lakeside have them, the One Lakeside Tower?
Yes.
So it has them. And here's a good question for you. That Thomas George that they're building right now, does it have them?
Unknown. So when Thomas George was coming in for permitting, we were trying to get this passed at that time. We believe that it was, I believe that it was still designed with the firefighter rooms in place because they chose not to voluntarily go forward with, we were asking them to do FARs because we knew we were heading this way, and they chose.
And that was my next question. So FARS is gonna be in that building?
No. We tried
Well,
to
we
get
tear it down then.
Yeah, we tried to get it ahead of time. We just did not, we did not get our ducks in a row quick enough to hit these last two.
So they're not gonna have fire equipment rooms or FARs?
They should have fire,
They
should have
should.
fire equipment rooms under when their permit was, because that's the ordinance that's in
Right.
place right now. So they will be there.
That's a bummer then. Yeah,
Yes.
thanks.
I gotta figure out a new hand signal that's more visual, so like, right here.
Need a flag.
A little flag. I had a couple things. One is, follow up on that Thomas George question. Could one of these developers voluntarily put a system in after the fact, once they found out that this would be a much safer operation for their entire project?
Yes, absolutely.
So it's retrofittable, is what I'm saying. It can be put into a building that already exists.
Yes.
And that's part of what we're talking about here tonight.
Thomas George, I think, in speaking with Ted, they were pretty tight on their stairwells, so we would have to potentially do something creative to make it all work with all of the codes that are in place, but it should be possible. Typically, this system's going to get set up essentially alongside the water standpipe, right? So we're going to have a water standpipe in the corner of that stairwell. We'll have an air standpipe in the corner of that stairwell
And
as
that's
well.
theoretically the strongest part of the building, so.
It's protected. We have, smoke control systems in there to help keep smoke out of the stairwells. That's where we want people to evacuate. It's 2-hour rated for fire. It's where firefighters are coming in and where the occupants are going out.
So this system to me is sort of like the next iteration of public safety for the building, the people in the building, and the surrounding people. So I just had a couple of other things that we talked about. Is potentially a small cost savings to the city down the road because the fire department right now is buying all these tanks and has to renew that inventory on a regular basis. With this system, they wouldn't have to do that as often.
That's correct. Yep.
So that was one thing I wanted to make clear. The other thing we talked about, backing up, a conversation came to me about the solution to the problem is simple, just don't approve any more high-rises. So I just wanted to be clear that this isn't we're a boom town, and so we're just allowing all this to happen. The landowners who buy that property within the downtown overlay district, which decades ago was where our comp plan dictated taller buildings would be able to be built, they have the right to build as tall as they want to build. It's not the council saying, well, you can't just do that, and we're going to say no to that one because your neighbors don't like it. So it's a right and title that that property owner has, and we have to kind of work within that time frame. So I wanted to clear that up. Unless I'm wrong about that, Randy or Troy, that's where the high-rises in Coeur d'Alene were planned decades ago to go, is in this area. So this is kind of the next generation of protecting the city and the citizens with that. One of the other last things we talked about was the loan program that we just recently approved that was kind of spurred on by the Marriott. One of my questions was, would it be this installation of this program, because it's an environmental aid to not have as many of these tanks that are going to be recycled and disposed, could a property owner get that type of a loan for a system like this, which would help them offset the costs of having to put it in? I can't remember the acronym, I'm sorry for the name of that.
CPACE.
Yeah, CPACE loans.
I'm not sure. The CPACE loans typically deal with water and energy, not necessarily fire safety provisions, but I'd have to look. It's not specifically mentioned in the statute or the program.
So it doesn't say you can't, so maybe it's something we could look at if in the future there's a potential opportunity. That's all the questions I had about it.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, no, go ahead, Randy.
I just wanted to draw council's attention to the fact that the ordinance that's in your packet had some edits that didn't make it into your packet.
Oh.
So I would like to go through, there's about 3 or 4 of them, if that's all right, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So on the first page of the ordinance, under 1505.010C, it was a typo where it said IRC, which is the International Residential Code. It should be the IFC, International Fire Code. The second is in also in subsection C. The fire department did not want to put this system below ground, so that paragraph was rewritten to require fill stations on the ground floor and every third floor level thereafter, excluding the top occupiable floor. So that's a change in that paragraph. Then in subparagraph D, 3 lines from the bottom, it says for buildings 500,000 square feet, the fire department asked that to be changed to 150,000 square feet. And finally, in paragraph E, at the very end of that, where it says replenishment professional preparing the plans, we added the phrase, or the fire code official. And so those were the changes that had been made, and I apologize for those not getting into the packet.
Okay, questions? Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, both Councilman Gookin and Councilman Miller bring up really, really good questions, real strong points about our existing high-rises that do not have this system or capability. So I don't know if there's appetite by council to address that in ordinance, but I do want to know what are we doing with the fire department leadership? Probably this is directed at you, Tom, or our administration, to bring those people along and help them understand how important this is, how critical it is to our firefighters' safety. Anybody?
That's a great question. If the council seems to have that as if that's in your wheelhouse, in your temperature of control or of comfort, we would be happy to try to meet with the building owners, property owners that are our existing.
It's definitely in my comfort. I don't know about the rest of council, but I think that we should contact them and help them understand how important this is and help them come up with a plan to get it in place. What does everybody else think?
I think it's definitely worth the outreach to do it. I also think that's one of the reasons I brought up the research on the CPACE loan, and also to find out, is there any other, if one of our towers says, we get this, but we just can't afford to do it, I think it's tough to have their folks be put, and the surrounding community. It's not just the people who live in the building. These buildings are not far from other people who
That's right.
live around there. And so if there's ways that we could research any grants that anybody may have gotten across the country to help retrofit some buildings, or get a CPACE loan, or get any other kind of support to help them come alongside and install one of these into all of our towers. I don't know what's out there. I would sure like to find out, though.
Sure. I know that probably about 8 years ago now, there was a tax change that changed how sprinkler systems were depreciated. Do you remember us talking about that, Troy? And I didn't understand it fully, but Troy told me it was a very good deal for retrofitting to a business owner, and so maybe that's an avenue that, state-wise or national-wise, we can look to see if that's a place that could be added to that program.
Well, I know that's a lot, but is there a way a white paper could be drafted with some potential options for presentation to some of our existing towers, and explaining the code and what's now available, and, a tax credit, a grant, any avenues at some point that they could see?
I would agree with that, Councilwoman Miller, that
If we
we
have-
should give that direction and
I have
tell
a
you to
couple
go
of thoughts,
forward.
if I could,
Yeah.
before you go down that road. So in the past, the towers are not up to code with the closets. Is that correct? Back to 2006?
Correct. Prior to
So we haven't been
06.
really pushing this very hard since '06 when we started, and now we have something new and we want to hit it hard. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I think we want to show them what's available. I mean, I'm not talking about using any kind of authority. Just show them what's available and how can we help them help us.
Okay. The other question I had was, is the Kootenai County Building aware of this? Is it included in their program? Too far along?
It is too far along, yes, sir.
Okay.
But it does require a water standpipe, so it would have fallen into this ordinance as well.
Water standpoint, and now an
So
air.
we're using the water standpipe requirement that's in the fire code to be one of our triggers that would trigger this. So the thought being that if vetted through all of the code council hearings and documents and public comments and the process that writes code, if it was determined that at a certain height, water standpipes are valuable to the firefighters, we felt that that was a good trigger point to say, then at that point, air is also a good thing for firefighters as well.
So along the same thoughts, I'm thinking about apartments. What is the height before you start saying, hey, you need this or that?
In the current 2018 code is four stories or 40 feet, I think.
4 or more?
Yeah.
And that's where the closets worked also.
The closets triggered anything above 10, which is actually 3 stories taller than a definition of a high rise. So it was kind of a no man's definition. So you would have a high rise by definition in fire code or building code, and that was 7 or 8 stories. But it wouldn't necessarily trigger the firefighter rooms for taking care of a high-rise fire until it was a 10-story. So it was a little bit of an off, and we just wanted to try and tie it to something else that was in code.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if we could stay focused on what the topic is here, and if we want to
Sure.
add a discussion item regarding this topic to a future council meeting, we should do that. Otherwise, I think we should just
I think I just want to hear what Mr. English
Yes,
has
and we'd like
say.
to, and we'd also like to bring our ops chief in to give you guys a little high-rise 101, just kind of talk through what that process looks like as well. We just figured it would be, you had enough presentations today.
Dan?
Just a final thought on a couple people touched on is that, this new lending program is one avenue. The tax code is another. Our legislators are just going down there, and they are always looking for ways to be helpful to the cities and pass something that would help. So let's get it in gear with them. Give them an opportunity to, that sounds like a very small code amendment, so.
Maybe you know somebody. That would be helpful.
They don't listen to me.
All right, let's move
So
on.
I'd like to make a motion to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill 241020 once by title only.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to dispense with the rule and read title only. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Gookin.
Please.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Thank you. Clerk, read the title, please.
Council Bill 24-1020, an ordinance providing for the amendment of Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code 15510, providing for the repeal of Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code 15650, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing for the publication of a summary of the ordinance, and providing for an effective date thereof.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I would move to adopt Council Bill 241020.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on. Mike Anderson from our famous compost area. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Give me a minute, I'll get my presentation up here. A lot of presentations, as I was noted. Well, thank you, Council. Tonight I present to you a math problem, which I've entitled Riverside Interceptor and Fairway Trunk Main Surcharge Fees. After hearing some of the presentations this evening, I think that this is relatively much more black and white. It really is almost simple math. But what we're going to try to do when we get through this is I would like to present to you the rationale on why I'm suggesting these surcharges, explain the cost distribution and why we think it's fair, a little bit about the ordinance details, and obviously, importantly, how does this benefit the community? And then at the end of it, I'd like you to say yes. So a little bit of background on Coeur development. In March of 2023, they annexed in 438 acres, and it was south of Hanley here on this map, if you can see my arrow, south of Hanley, and then these, in this area here, for the most part. There's a couple small areas that did not get annexed in that are included on this map, but I wanted to use this map because it shows you a little bit about the sewer basins, and I just wanted to basically show you that this upper area here, this top third area or so, is intended to flow north, and then these bottom the bottom two-thirds of it are intended to flow more or less kind of south, okay? But in that annexation agreement, there was a limit, and we had a development agreement that limited it to 2,800 ERUs. And that's an equivalent residential unit, which is just a standard unit that we use, and that is a house. So they're limited to 2,800 houses, and if you put in a restaurant, your restaurant may be worth 50 houses or 50 ERUs. So they're limited to 2,800 ERUs. We are also looking at the U.S. Forest Service property. Now, for clarification, the U.S. Forest Service property is not annexed into the city, but it would also impact, if it were to annex into the city and then develop, which again, it is not being developed at this time. If it were, it's anticipated to impact these areas as well. So we wanted to include that area into this, into these surcharges. So the U.S. Forest Service property is about 200 acres, and we simply did our first math problem here, which is the limit of 2,800 ERUs on this property divided out amongst the 438 acres gave us a density of so many ERUs per acre. So we just simply multiplied that. What that number came out to times 200 acres gave us, we assumed 1,275 ERUs. And the reason for doing that is so that what could go into the U.S. Forest Service property is equivalent to what we see here, just we're trying to make it as equal as possible. So that total was 4,075 ERUs. So what is the problem here? Why am I even talking about this? It is two problems. One is the fairway trunk main is going to, would eventually, when all this would build out, would eventually lead to issues, as would the Riverside Interceptor. So because of this, you can see the cost of those is $2.4 million on the fairway trunk main and a bigger project of $10.5 million on the Riverside Interceptor. We didn't want everybody in the city to bear that cost, so we wanted to allocate it strictly to those people whom it were affecting. So that's why these maps are here.
Mike, could I ask you a quick
Please.
question? The difference between the trunk main and the interceptor?
Mm-hmm. So the fairway trunk main is, if you can again see my mouse, it's just a line here that runs on the south side of the golf course, and it's simply not sloped properly. So it's rather steep, and then it shallows off, and what happens when you try to run a whole bunch of wastewater through that is it'll end up backing up. It just doesn't have a nice laminar smooth flow through there. So we need to perform a little bit of slope modifications on it. So we'll end up digging up that road there and putting in new pipe at the correct grade. And that one is $2.4 million. And the Riverside Interceptor is a bigger project, and it runs on the other side of the highway here along Centennial Trail all the way to the plant. And that one is currently a 24-inch pipe, and it handles a whole big chunk of the city. Probably just less than half of the city is flowing through there. But it won't be able to fit this extra bit, both of these properties that you see here in purple. So we need to install in a 21-inch parallel pipe. We'll continue to utilize the 24-inch interceptor pipe, which is gravity, and we'll just add another sister pipe next to it to handle more flow. So we'll utilize our existing infrastructure, but we need more of it.
Thank you.
So if you lived up here in this upper portion that's not in yellow on this fairway trunk main, you can see you're not in yellow, which means you're not running south through that fairway trunk main, so you wouldn't pay that fee. But you would be in the Riverside Interceptor. It's in purple here, so you would be having to pay that Riverside Interceptor fee. All your flow would end up going through that pipe, that 24-inch pipe, which can handle it, so you would need to pay for a bit of that 21-inch pipe. If you lived here in the south, for example, of the Coeur area, I'm going to call it Coeur because it's been called many different things, so let's just stick with Coeur if we can. If you were to try to build a house here in the south, you obviously are in purple, so you would be flowing through the Riverside Interceptor, and you'd have to pay your portion of that 21-inch pipe. But as well, you're also in the yellow zone, so your flow kind of runs south and runs through that uneven pipe that I was mentioning here that needs to be regraded, the fairway trunk main, so you have to pay for your portion of that share of that project as well.
So the fairway runs into the Riverside?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, got
Yep.
it. Got it.
And again, before I get off that, oh boy, that was a dangerous move, huh? Sorry. Should take a PowerPoint class. This area here, U.S. Forest Service land, not annexed into the city, not currently developing. We're just planning for the future on that. Mm-hmm. So the way the math breaks down, I know that it was going to be a math problem, but really we did all the work. I just need you to verify my numbers, basically. That fairway trunk main is $2.4 million. And if you add up everybody that was in, I think that was the yellow one, it's 2414 ERUs, comes out to $1,005 for that fee. So like I said, you'd pay for your portion of it. Your portion is $1,000. And then the Riverside Interceptor is a much bigger project, and that's $10.5 million, but it's serving more ERUs, so that breaks down to $2,500 or so, $2,590 per ERU. And again, that's per house. If you had a restaurant that was worth 50 ERUs, it would be that number times 50. And this fee would be assessed like all of our fees at building permits. So when you come in and pay your cap fee would still be needing to be paid. Again, the cap fee is your portion of everything else, all the other pipes, the treatment plant, the everything that everybody in the city's already paid, either with their cap fee or continues to pay for, or with maintenance with their rates pays for all that. So the cap fee pays for that. That would be assessed, and this would be on top of that cap fee. And then we're also on this one a little bit of a change. We're going to escalate this according to the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index. So that is a nationwide number where they look at how much has the cost of a brick gone up, or how much has the labor of an electrician gone up, and they look at general construction costs, and it escalates. I'll throw out a number of about, it depends on the year, but 1.5% a year or something like that. But that way, somebody's coming in 20 years from now is still paying for a cost that is expected to be somewhat reasonable of what it's going to cost at that time. So what's the benefits of this? Obviously, equity. We want that cost to be borne by those who are utilizing the infrastructure. If you had a restaurant on Government Way and you weren't going to use this, there's not really a reason for you to be paying for it. So it's really nice to be able to utilize one of these specific projects like Mill River. We charged a fee for Mill River lift station, and if you're discharging the Mill River lift station, I just came forward last council meeting, and we discussed about how we're using this money that's been set aside by all these people that are using it. So it's helpful to have that, not have that cost be borne by our current residents. Point number 2 here, it keeps our rates down. And then, of course, sustainability. We want to make sure we don't get to the point where we're looking at these projects. We don't want to get to the point where we all of a sudden can't take anybody else in because we've got no more room in the pipes. So with that, I would seek for your decision point to pass these 2 surcharges, and as well the annual escalation via the ENR Construction Cost Index, and would stand here for any questions you may have, or we can discuss it.
Questions? Mike, I have one. Would anybody end up paying both those fees because they use both?
Yes.
So they don't necessarily, it's, pushing $3,500 or so. Okay. And is anybody going to just pay one?
Yes. So if you're in a northern portion of that, I could try to back up here again. Maybe it's a little easier to see on the map. If you're up here in this area here, you're pay the purple fee, which is the more expensive one.
Okay.
But it's the was $25.90, I believe. It was the total.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's a difference between when these fees are going to be charged and when the work is done. So what happens? Do we do the work now, or do we do the work after we've collected all the money?
We will do the work when needed. So we probably won't have obviously, if the project costs $10 million for easier math here, and there are 1,000 homes that are coming in, and that's going to be it takes 1,000 homes to pay for it. We can't wait till that 1,000 home to come in. In other words, we're going to have to do the project before it's needed.
Right.
So we won't have the full funding of it. So we'll have to pay for it with whatever we've accumulated, and we'll use some of our capital fees or cash balance or something along the lines, and then be reimbursed from future people who are moving in.
So what's the current level in the 2 mains, in the main and the interceptor? Do you know?
It is not much. It is about a point. It's less than 0.25 D over D, what we call. So it's less than a quarter full. It's probably about 20% full or 15% full.
Okay.
So it is not very full, but we obviously don't want to run full.
Right. And it's like 80% you guys are freaking out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because they're not pressurized. And then why did you choose to do 2 pipes instead of just making the one main bigger?
For cost effectiveness. The one Riverside pipe is made out of PVC, which is a material that's lasting a very long time, and it's resistant. It's a great material. So to utilize that existing infrastructure, it's just easier to, 1, not waste that money, and 2, it saves the construction cost for as far as like bypass pumping and things like that. If you maintain current service while just building a parallel pipe next to it, it makes it a lot cheaper.
And regarding the Forest Service nursery property, what do you know?
Nothing. I know that I don't, quite frankly, this area here in purple that annexed in, the Coeur property, if that was the only thing that was going to annex in, we wouldn't need either one of these projects. So if the U.S. Forest Service, if we were to do that and not do these projects, this is again according to a model, so we would obviously field verify all this. But if the U.S. Forest Service property were to come in, there's obviously a lot less homes there, and in order to get this done, we'd be like, okay, it's $30,000 for each of you to cover these projects, and it just wouldn't be able to be developed. So that's why we incorporated these two fees. We kind of had the foresight to incorporate these in the development and annexation agreement. So when the developer annexed into the city, we said, okay, welcome to the city, but you're going to have to assist us with these two projects.
So if there was no guarantee or there was no annexation of the Forest Service nursery property, in eternity, the people in Coeur would not have to pay these fees. And you would not have to do another interceptor and a new trunk.
If we pass the surcharge tonight, then
No,
yes, they would have to pay the fees. If we did not pass it, and you're just wondering, would it be required to do the upgrades?
Yes.
We'd be a lot fuller.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'd be much closer. Again, the math on the model says no.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's good to be prepared. It's just, that is a big chunk of property. And I remember there was a concern years ago about whether they were going to sell it and develop it, and then they built a multi-million-dollar facility there. So, and they said they're not moving anywhere. But it's the federal government, so who knows? So, anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Council, he's over here
I'm
squirming.
still trying to
I'm
get
getting
my
this.
flag to get me just
Go ahead.
a couple of quick things. Mike, the ERU, I am assuming that this is kind of is this a national model that you use when you say it's one residential unit? Where I'm going with this is, if you have a custom home that has 3 laundry rooms and 5 bathrooms, it's going to be charged the same fee as a townhome that is got 1 bathroom and 1 laundry room?
Yes.
So my conversation surrounding that is, I'm into attainable housing, and obviously that's always part of where my mindset goes. There isn't an ability to do, or has there been any discussion that says, can we work with the developers on something like this so that they aren't paying full boat for a minimal use impact to keep their housing costs down versus a custom home that is likely way over in that ERU category? Or you're just saying what's easy for me is to just average it out?
Yes, what's doable, honestly, is to average it out. But we do have some delineation in there, and it's at multifamily, where apartments pay less than a single-family house. But yes, a single-family house, if you've got a 1,000 square foot single-family home, you're paying the same amount as 4,000 square foot single-family home. That's both in terms of, for the most part, these fees and rates too. We look at an average across the city as far as water usage to develop all that stuff. So yes, your house that is 1,000 square foot, and it's one person living there or something, and a giant house that's 4,000 square feet and has exactly 6 bathrooms or something. We end up finding the average, and we get the average across the board.
If this were passed the way that it sits right now, and I get that you have to find a model, we're going to have to build this, we're going to spread it out over all these people, we're going to average it, and that's how we're going to pay for it. Is there the ability to have a conversation to work with the developer in the future who is providing attainable housing and has come to the table with that to come back to council with requests to reduce these fees to some of those properties?
We haven't done that in the past. Obviously, you're the council, and those decisions would fall on you. But we haven't done that in the past for the reason of wanting to maintain equitability. If you have one person, a developer, regardless of what they're developing, if they're not paying their fair share, somebody else is going to have to pay more. And if we don't collect enough from the people who are utilizing these lines, then the wastewater department will have to come up with the remainder, which It's not like it's my money. It's the community's money. So we'll be taking it from the other ratepayers.
Well, I'm always amazed at where money shows up. So I'm always going to ask the question, so I appreciate it.
And again, obviously, this is a city that's run by the council.
All right. Questions, comments, look for a motion, please.
Sure, I'll make a motion to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 241021 once by title only.
Second.
Been moved and second. Discussion. Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Miller,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Pass. Motion passed. To read the title, Joe, please.
Council Bill 241021, an ordinance of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, establishing sewer surcharges for certain properties located in an area consisting of 438.718 acres, commonly known as Coeur, described in Exhibit A hereto, and properties which may be annexed in the future, and providing for the effective date hereof.
So, I would make the motion then to adopt Council Bill 241021.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Miller,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion passed.
And Mr.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
we got through that without one pun.
I know.
Thank you, sir.
Did say chunky.
I did say chunk of
I
the city,
almost
that's
jumped
right.
on it,
Yeah.
and I couldn't help it. All right, next up, council discussion on billboard regulations. Renata, welcome back from vacation.
Thank you. All right, I have a few slides to go over with you tonight, and then this is just an opportunity for council to have some discussion and give some direction to staff. So as a little reminder of why we have the sign code and some of the stuff that we brought forward previously. We want to keep it content neutral. We're trying to make sure we keep our constitutionality, so anything we do needs to keep that in mind, that we can't regulate based on sign content. And if anything we do going forward, what that does with existing codes and make sure we don't create additional conflicts in code. So the purpose within our code for the sign code is based on the prior approval of council in this code, and it talks about for communities to look at whether signs obstruct views, distract motorists, displace alternative uses of lands, or affect the aesthetics of the community. And I know sometimes when we talk about aesthetics, it's an uncomfortable conversation, it's subjective, but it is something that is related to signs and gives you the authority to regulate based on that aesthetics. The code also talks about declaring it necessary to regulate signs because of public health, safety, the neatness, cleanliness, and orderly appearance of the city, and all of these subject matters you guys have seen before. Just wanted to reiterate that is still part of the sign code. So in June of 2024, this year, council adopted ordinance number 3731, and it authorized that owners of existing billboards could seek to apply for a relocation to move their sign within the city under certain circumstances. It would have to be in a commercial zone or manufacturing zone, required a public hearing, and then findings of facts from the council. As we received our first application for relocation of the billboard sign, we went through the review of it, and there were two sections of the code that they were unable to meet. The sign company has requested council review that code and requested a variance actually from it, and there's nothing in the code that allows for variance, so that would be something for council to consider if you want to include some sort of variance language. There's nothing in there that allows any discrimination from staff to waive these requirements, so that is why we bring it forward back to council. So the request was specifically for a two-sided billboard that's currently located on Northwest Boulevard to be moved to Government Way, which is addressed on Second, but it fronts Government Way. On the left-hand side here, you'll see the existing sign on Northwest Boulevard. It's almost at it is at the intersection of Mill Avenue and Northwest Boulevard. And you can see from these signs that it is a bit shorter than the proposed sign. That was one of the conflicting sections of code. So the code actually says that there is no increase in height of the existing billboard shall be permitted except where it's needed to provide a minimum height clearance for roadway safety. So we don't have any other variances from that code section. The other section that they were unable to meet was that no billboard may be located closer than 500 feet to a residential zoning district. So that is one of the other conflicts. So the height of the existing sign is about 25 feet 8 inches at its highest. It's kind of on a little slope. There's a little bit of a difference, but at its highest point, that's where it's at currently. The proposed height of the sign on Government Way would be at 37 feet. The residential zoning conflict comes in that they are approximately 380 feet from an R12 property, 410 feet from an R17. And I'll show you that. The red area here is the R7 or the C17. That's the commercial zone that they are allowed to move the sign within. Then you can see that the 380 feet comes at this angle to the R12, and the 410 feet come to the R17. And again, the code says that it cannot be any closer than 500 feet. So as you look at the right-hand map here, here's our zoning map, and you can see all the areas that are in red are those commercial zones in the city limits of Coeur d'Alene. The gray areas are those manufacturing zones. In the prior code, before it was amended, it did have in there that billboards would only be allowed within 615 feet of the Interstate Freeway along Northwest Boulevard, Highway 95 north of Apple Way, within the city limits. And I think it was in 1992 where the ordinance was passed, and all billboards that didn't meet this had to be removed. So all the existing billboards that we have in town that have the ability to be moved are within those areas. So this is some that the Planning Commission or Planning Department, excuse me, put together for me. Excuse me, and unfortunately Hillary's not able to be here tonight, so bear with me on these ones. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see that the allowable area that was under the previous code is outlined in the black. Under the existing sign code that would allow movement within these areas, and that is again only if it met all those other elements such as the distance within a residential zone. So as we look at this, these are some of the scattering maps of where they would be disallowed if they were near historic properties, schools, parks, churches, and cemeteries. This is a conglomeration of all of those, plus the residential zoned areas. So you will see the areas that are not blurred out in blue, that are still red, would be the allowable areas for movements of billboard signs under the current code. So at this point in time, staff's here to answer questions, provide any guidance, but this is really an opportunity for council to decide if those codes that are currently existing should stand, if you want to amend them in some way, if you want to add additional sections to the code to allow for variances, or how you would like staff to proceed with the code. And
Thank you,
I stand
Renata.
for questions, as does
Council.
City Attorney.
Benny.
Well, I'm way behind the curve on this, and I have a couple questions, if I may. First, why did the council decide to do an ordinance change?
I think there was a request from the Lamar Sign Company to analyze that code and look at opportunities for them to move billboards.
And was Lamar aware of what they had to do size-wise and what they had to do distance-wise?
Yes, we've provided them with the code, and when they submitted their application, in their narrative, they did state they met all the code requirements. So it was just until we really started digging through all the details that we realized there were those two conflicting areas.
So if they would have met the specifications, would we even be having this discussion?
I don't believe so.
Kiki.
Mr. Mayor, I I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been reading through emails back and forth. This code, this language, it's very complicated, and it seems to be growing in complication. One of the things we had talked about last time is being, and it's part of our mission here, is to be business friendly, and I believe we had passed the digitization ability for any of the existing locations for signs, which expands that business friendly piece to it. They have more opportunity for businesses to be on those digital signs and more opportunity for the sign owner to expand their market. So I think we're really doing this. But what I'm sensing here is that this is becoming more and more problematic. We keep tripping over this same issue again and again. And I feel like staff, great presentation, has spent a huge amount of time on this. But here's where I am with it today, is that I would like to make a motion to repeal all the code language and regulations in this sign ordinance that allow for a billboard to be moved from its existing location or a new one added to any location. And that's what I'm doing now, is making that motion.
I would second the motion for discussion.
Okay, it's
Sorry, I'm catching your.
Sorry, I know.
And what's the net result of that? To freeze it or to do away with billboards back to?
Not to do away with billboards, to just
Okay.
do away with, I think it became, we approved to move forward with allowing them to be moved. I'm just sensing that's going to be problematic every time we do it, and I think we've done a huge amount of work in working with the sign companies to give them expanded with digital with that base, and I think we just made a mistake by trying to get into allowing billboards to be moved, and I'm just suggesting that we go back to where we were with the number of billboards we had in the locations that we had and allow them to be digitized in those locations if the owner so wanted to do that.
Mr. Kukin.
Thank you. Kiki, I definitely agree with you that we need to be more business friendly. I also was going to talk about deregulation because that seems to be a hot topic politically on the national scale, as well as our own governor, who is boasting about how deregulated Idaho is. And when we originally passed this ordinance unanimously, I commented that it seemed onerous, it seemed anti-business, it seemed like there's just too many hoops to go through, there's too many things too many boxes to check, too many places where it's just going to grind to a halt. It's not business friendly. But I also have to look at, what are we going to do to be more accommodating to our existing businesses who desire to do things and ask for the city's help? And specifically, I want to touch upon one thing in Renata's presentation, which was about views and vistas. And right now, the billboard in question is on Northwest Boulevard, on the entry point of our city, and it would really be nice if it was gone from there. I think it would make the city look a lot better. That's an area that's being improved now, and there's new businesses coming in there, and anything to declutter it would be appreciated for the views and vistas. And the proposal submitted by Lamar was to move it to an area that's, well, just not as pretty. It's kind of in the middle of town. It's by Costco, and it was more of an area that people don't go to look at things. So I would say that that would be a positive step in that direction. The problem with the code right now is that it says no billboard may be located closer than 500 feet to a residential zoning district. And I don't know if that number was obtained from any study or just pulled out from something else, where it came from. And if you saw the map that was shown earlier, the residential areas that it would be within 500 feet of, there's a lot of commercial structure between the residential area and where the billboard would be. So to add a billboard in that area is not really something that's, in other words, someone would really have to crane their neck to look over a storage facility, to look over a construction business, to look over Costco to see a billboard from their house. So I would not be in favor of that motion. I would just be in favor of eliminating that 500 distance, because if you put it in a commercial zone, it's a commercial activity, and people who live next to a commercial zone already face commercial activity. And then the height restriction thing is, to me is a little bit nitpicky, and that could be pulled out as well. And I think if those two things are removed, then we have an opportunity with a public hearing to discuss it and to see what it is we can do to help a business that's a legitimate business to thrive in town. Throwing it out, to me, is saying we're anti-business, not because that is our motive, but because what was asked of us was, can we move a billboard? And we said yes. And then we created a really complicated code that's like stereo instructions or programming a computer or something, and it's really hard to follow, as evidenced by the fact that we had a hearing scheduled, and oh my gosh, right after the hearing was scheduled, we discovered that it was out of compliance, which just, to me, underscores how complicated the thing is. So let's make it less complicated. Let's see how it works, as council voted for it unanimously. So I can't support the motion. I would like to just move forward and deregulate what we have here to allow this business to thrive in the city and send a message to all businesses that we are business friendly.
Mr. Mayor, may I? I'd just like to correct Dan, thank you, and there's some points I agree with, but it wasn't a unanimous vote. I did not vote.
Oh, I'm
I did
sorry.
not vote to support the
Thank you.
movement of billboards, so.
Mr. Mayor.
Christie.
Well, number one, I don't think that it's an appropriate motion. No offense to you, Kiki, but at no point were we notified that we would be dissolving an ordinance. This is discussion to give staff a direction to come back with us to have discussion on proposed amendments. So I don't think it flies to just throw out the ordinance tonight. Obviously, I don't support that at all. I also think it's a little bit unfair that there was a public hearing scheduled. Lamar would have had an opportunity to speak and counter maybe some of the things that have been said. They're not being given that opportunity, and now it's just discussion of throughout the entire ordinance. So I don't like that at all. We are always very serious about being business friendly. And if you look at what people think or don't think about billboards, that's really not important. What's important is, what does a city do to support business if they're a legitimate business and they follow all of our ordinances? So this specific business supports our area businesses all the time. The Coeur d'Alene Tribe, Super One, the college, the Kootenai Health, they all use billboards. These are not out-of-state big advertisements for companies we don't know anything about. These are homegrown. They're supporting local business. Are there too many billboards in the city? I don't think so. And this ordinance that we're trying to make sense of doesn't give the ability for there to be more billboards. Nobody's asking for that. They're asking for the ability to update their business with the times. And so updating means moving a board to a commercial area. I happen to think, like Dan said, it's complete common sense to move it off of the entrance to the city and up to a commercial zone. That makes complete sense to me. Would they be able to move all of them? I think it'd take a long time. I would imagine that they don't have the property and they don't have, maybe, I don't know. That's a very expensive proposition. But I just feel like we're going down the wrong road already, because we have not allowed Lamar to have a public hearing. They, in good faith, said, push this to January sometime. That would have been their public hearing. If we take action tonight and just abolish the ordinance altogether, that's just outrageous behavior to an area business.
Go ahead, Amy.
I have a couple of questions. On Christie's point, with Lamar's proposal coming forward, if I'm remembering correctly, Lamar and another billboard company, I forgot, do you guys remember the name?
Yesco.
Yesco.
Thank you, Yesco. They were at the table when we were creating this ordinance and provided feedback and their thoughts and guidance in some aspect. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, they were involved. They may not have agreed with everything that was in the ordinance, but they were at the table, yes.
Okay, so they had an opportunity, which may or may not have come through. They may have, like you said, disagreed on different points, but they were well aware of the criteria and expectation to bring forward.
Yes, I believe they were. I think, maybe these two areas were just an oversight from their perspective. I don't know for sure.
And my last question may be for Hillary, so Troy and Renate, I don't know, is when we have another proposal, it's not outside of billboards, and I'm trying to think on the spot of a really good example, and of course that's hard, that is not quite meeting the requirements, would we bring it forward to council to discuss, or would typically planning work on that with the applicant to make sure they're meeting the requirements before it comes to council? I'm trying to address Christie's point of Lamar was not given the opportunity to come before us tonight because their application did not meet the requirements of the ordinance. My understanding is that's standard process if that planning would normally vet out. You see where I'm going with this?
So would they have not accepted the application if it wasn't complete? Would it have stopped there if they didn't meet the code requirements?
I don't know that that's the question. I think the question is, how does an ordinance come before council?
No, my question is, Christie was mentioning that she would have liked Lamar's project movement of the billboard to come before us tonight, but it's not before us tonight because it's not meeting the specific requirement that we set in the ordinance.
Actually, they voluntarily removed
Yes.
their ability.
They agreed to withdraw it, and it's been rescheduled for another date
Okay.
in order to give council an opportunity to look at the ordinance.
Okay. So my question was, and maybe it's a moot point now with that clarification, is if another project didn't meet the requirements set by the city, take billboards out of it, they didn't meet the setback requirements, would it come before us, or would that be vetted out with Planning Commission?
No, there are, it
Or
depends
Planning
on.
Department, excuse me.
It depends on the wording of the ordinance, and
Okay.
I've taken the position that staff, in most cases, does not have the authority to prevent something from coming before council. There may be some examples where it says if the application doesn't meet the requirements, it doesn't go forward. In the case of signs, in the case of most other things in the city, if somebody files an application that goes before council, my recommendation has always been it goes before council. And if it doesn't meet the requirements, council has to deny it.
Thank you.
Back to me? Oh, I just want to address a few things while we're still in discussion. And one is that I appreciate all of the input, but I will say we are business friendly. All of these billboards are still available to all of those people who advertise on them, and in fact, more people, because they have the ability to be digitized. So we have gone that step to be business friendly. Regarding my view on bringing up a motion, council members do this all the time, where they see something and say, this is a motion for discussion, and so it is not outrageous for this to be considered right here. I don't think we're here in a position to support one business who had one request regarding ordinance language changes. When they were at the table, they did get involved, they did understand the application process. So I feel like if every time a billboard is going to be moved and we end up saying, well, we need to talk about the ordinance language again, this is just a problematic situation. We have billboards. We halted the addition of them years ago, 1992, but we have upgraded, gotten with the times, with what can happen with those billboards. And so I do think that that's there. We have, a situation before us that I will again say, it is in the best interest of the aesthetics of our city. Maybe it would be better to move it to a location that you, as a council person, think we should just do away with this residential 500 feet thing if it's in a commercial zone. Well, the next location may have a totally different residential neighborhood aspect to it. So are we going to put it back in for the next location when residents come out and complain? My feeling, and I feel strongly about it, is that we have done the good work for Lamar and for the businesses who want to advertise there, but it is within the scope to make a motion about this subject. That's what I did. And I would like to, be fair. But I think Lamar has advantages that they didn't have before. I think moving billboards is problematic. It's costing a huge amount of city time and actions, and every one of the things that was brought up here could happen with every single billboard when someone wants to move it. So I'm standing by my motion, and I'd really like to call for the question.
I
No,
object.
I object.
Hang on. I'm going to move forward here, let them, Dan.
Thank you. So I would like to just mention that if there's any
Oh, I'm
city
sorry,
time
Dan.
that's involved with this, it's because we created it. The other thing I'd like to ask you, and maybe you can help me with this, Kiki, what other businesses in town require government approval to change their location?
Well, I would say
Massage
all of
parlors
them.
would.
Any liquor?
Well,
Massage and
besides,
liquor licenses,
any,
Those are regulated by the state.
not the facilities. The massage facilities are regulated by the city.
So they have to ask our permission to relocate.
They have to notify us, and it has to be approved, yes.
And with a hearing.
I don't know that there's a council hearing on those.
So council's not involved. What section of code runs that then? Section of code.
Massage facility code, I think it's 5 point, or
2.8.
I can look it up if you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay, so they do
Chap-
require
Title 5.
permission of the government in order to relocate massage parlors and liquor stores.
Anything with alcohol, because they have that same.
There's alcohol in massage parlors? This is news
No,
to me.
I
I'd
said
like to know more.
anything, any business related to alcohol, not just liquor stores, because they have that residential zone requirement as well.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
well, and I don't.
Hang on, let me get through
I
this,
think the
please.
question was asked of me, so I was just going to respond to Councilmember Goodkin.
We could do this all night. Dan, English.
Just as I looked at this and wrestled, one thing, I think it is confusing, because as I go through this, it really seems like every other point of, purposes within the code, and A and B, and city finds and declares it's necessary to regulate because of these things, protect the health, safety of the community. Okay, improve the neat, clean, orderly appearance of the city. That's the aesthetics. Now, I thought I heard you say, and I might have misheard, that you said it really does, nobody really cares about the aesthetic, or it's not the aesthetic language, it's if it's business friendly. I thought that's what I heard. And then provide
I
the.
said?
Yeah, I thought in the little bit
No.
ago, but I might have
No, I didn't bring
misheard.
up
Okay.
aesthetics.
But provide for the informational needs, and so that's a good one. But preserve and protect scenic beauty, back to the aesthetics, promote traffic, well, that's kind of the safety, and then promote a healthy business climate. That's one place real clear. So to me, it is confusing. Now, I don't think we could have, I don't remember my stuff about action item, but it seems like to do something as major as like freeze that ordinance in place would be an action item that wasn't
Notice.
on here. But is that, Randy?
It's a staff direction.
The agenda is supposed to include all known items to be probable items of discussion. The agenda item states on your agenda, council discussion on billboard relocation regulations and direction to staff to prepare amendments to the regulation. Amendments to the regulation can include repeal of all of it or repeal of individual paragraphs. So
Okay.
I do
Okay.
think it
So
falls
that's
within
okay,
that.
but
And let me,
this-
correct what I said on the massage therapy. It only requires notice to the city clerk prior to relocation.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
I got to follow up on that. So
wanna
they
do
don't
this?
need government
Do you wanna do
approval.
this? I called on her, okay? You can come back. Sorry,
Um,
thank you.
You know, Mr. Mayor, I'm really concerned about the, I guess, I met with you on this issue, and you relayed to me to actually let Lamar know that we would come back and we'd be discussing this. So in good faith, I did that, and they in good faith canceled their public hearing. So they have no voice here. They are not able to talk to us. They never will be. I feel like that good faith has been completely abused here. I went out on a limb after speaking with you and said, gosh, why don't you come back? We'll have the public hearing at a later date after we discuss this. To me, that's just wrong. That's just wrong on behalf of this entire council. Whether you want to support it, don't support it, what you vote in the future, that kind of business is wrong. So I would just urge council that if you want to come back and have amendments to the code, at least do it appropriately, give them their opportunity at a public hearing.
Dan?
Oh, no, I'm good. I could bicker with Randy all day.
Correct, but the agenda item is to direct staff to do something with this code. So it's still going to come back to council for final approval.
However, they won't have a public hearing unless it's after the fact.
Well, there is no public hearing for an ordinance anyway. But they would be able, it will come back to council to vote yea or nay to the amendments that we are directed to create or to craft. You will have a vote. There will be an opportunity for public comment during that meeting.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, may I? So that's very different than a public hearing, Randy. You and I both know that. And Troy, I believe that you've set their public hearing for sometime in January?
I was proposing the second council meeting in January, correct?
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on this, Troy? Since you've had numerous communications with the business.
Yes. The thoughts would include, had Lamar met all the criteria, the public hearing would have happened. The second thought was the objective nature in which the letter went out prior to the public hearing so that they could have addressed that, because it does not look like you can approve a incoming request if it doesn't meet your ordinance. So I think we're on the right path. And of course, we would own as staff that there is no perfect ordinance. So all the things that were approved by council were approved by council. We just followed up on those to bring it forward and say, we can't meet these two areas, which I've talked with you and Councilmember Gookin on as well. So I think we're on the right path forward.
The right path being what?
What does council want to do with this, and how do you want to make it pliable enough? Because there's not enough flexibility in this ordinance for staff to have made any of these changes without coming back to you. So I believe
Right.
Lamar made the right decision when they couldn't meet what our ordinance is.
And they, through a public hearing process, might have had an opportunity to speak to us about their interpretation.
They could have done that, correct, but you would not, as I understand it, been able to approve that without giving us the latitude in the ordinance to meet what they were asking for.
I agree with that. And so I guess I would make an amendment to the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I was waiting to get called on before that happened.
I would make an amendment that we give staff direction to come back and give proposals on this, on the ordinance that is less restrictive, the same items that Councilman Gookin brought forward, and that is my motion.
Is it amendment or a substitute?
It's a substitute, thank you.
Second.
So I got a moon in a second. Do you want to have discussion? Because we're still in discussion on the first motion.
So now we're in discussion on the second motion?
Yes.
Or the first, or?
Mr. Mayor, I would just say that I sense that there's a couple people who are very passionate about this. I would have had no knowledge that you were liaisoning to Lamar and telling them.
At the request of the mayor. Let's be
Again,
careful about how we categorize that.
Again, I apologize, but I had the floor. I would, as a council member, not have known what your conversations were. I'm making my motion which I still stand by based on what I've shared, what I've read, and what my feelings about the future regarding continually directing staff in this moving billboard conversation. I would not have known what your positions were on that prior to making this motion. So I'm standing by my motion. I don't know what the rest of council thinks. I think we've gone down the road and it's not working. I think Lamar would have had their voice, would have had their say, had they met the criteria within the permit as it stood at the time. We wouldn't be here. So that's my view of it. I understand it doesn't agree with yours. I respect yours. And I am not characterizing anything other than telling you this is my view of how I saw this come together and the reason I made the motion. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if we're being factual, though, no, they would have had a public hearing. It isn't a matter of whether we agree with it or not. They would have had the opportunity for a public hearing. They have not been given that opportunity because, in good faith, we asked them to delay it. So I think that's bad faith on our part.
Mr. Mayor?
Kenny.
Well, this is interesting stuff right here.
Welcome to the show.
I know you don't want to go on all night, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate it. I'll try to be brief. Dan, one thing you've taught me in all these years I've watched you in council is you don't do one thing that might affect another. And that's the 500 feet, because if it's great for one, it probably won't be for another maybe. So I struggle with that. If this is broken, why don't we fix it? We just passed it in June. So if it's broken, why don't we just fix it?
Agreed.
Second.
Absolutely agree.
Hopefully to the desire of all of council.
So a question, Mr. Mayor, for Kiki. If you were going to not throw the whole thing out, is there anything specific in here that you find most egregious?
I'm just going to stick with the truth, what I told you in the beginning. I believe that the next time, we can tweak this code, we can change this language, we can have staff create a complicated 500, 400, whatever feet it is, and all of these directions to change the language. And then the next scenario that comes up is going to have a challenge to the code because of the location of where a billboard wants to be moved, and we'll be back here in the same situation. And I see it being problematic with any of these moves, and I don't think that it's necessary. I don't think it's unbusiness friendly. I don't think it's being unfair to one company. I have information now that I didn't have before, that more information was going back and forth to Lamar. I based my decision based on what was in front of me, and I still believe that. So no, I'm not going to say this is the wordsmithing I'd like to have. I don't think that it's a necessary code.
Amy.
Will Randy or Joanne please remind us where we're at with motions and amendments and what discussion points we're at?
Well, there are two motions. The agenda item says to give direction to staff, not to either repeal or amend the ordinance at this hearing. Staff could prepare two proposed amended ordinances, one that repeals the section per Kiki's motion, and one to eliminate the two sections per, I think it was Dan's original motion or Christie's motion. And those can be brought before council at the first meeting in January. The public hearing on the application is set for the second meeting in January. So you can finally decide on the first meeting of January which way you want to go. You don't need to decide tonight. We can bring you two ordinances to choose from, if you wish.
Yeah. I like that idea, but I do enjoy the arguing.
Well, I know you do.
I'm not fond of it.
Oh, me neither.
Christy, where are you at on that?
You know, I will go with the group and what the group wants to do. I don't like stringing the billboard industry along. I don't, and it probably comes across that I'm blaming staff. I'm not. I think there's a lot of miscommunication that went on, and You know, we all have to take accountability for that. But it's still been a real negative experience for that industry. And I don't think that's necessary in the city of Coeur d'Alene. So you know, if we don't want to direct them tonight to go one way or other, I'll go with the group. We can come back and do this all over again. I'm fine with that.
Dan English?
Well, just to clarify, if you do those two options, which most of that I like, but I don't like the idea of like getting rid of all of the distance stuff. I don't like it to be all or nothing, but is 300 the right? Is 400? I don't know, but I mean, that's something I'd want to look at, but I don't think there should be, we don't want like, oh, if you got a 20-foot setback, you're good enough. When I think of like a polling site in the code, and you can't do electioneering, which is advertising, within X amount of the polling site, and it's not to the property line, it's to the actual door of where they're going to go into that polling site, which is a big difference from maybe the corner of the property. So all of that to just demonstrate that I think this is something, we have fiddled with it, and I appreciate reading in the past. I've been fiddling with this for a couple of decades, it sounds like, and so a little bit more time to fine tune because we do want to get there, but do it in a reasonable way. So I'm good with this, but we may make some amendments to one of those. So,
Amy?
I'm looking forward to seeing what coming back. I did not support this when it was before us the first time. I likely won't support it moving forward, but I'm always open to seeing what we come back as a city team. I'm definitely not in support of reducing our requirements, but that's where I stand.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to add one more thing. I know that the cities around us deal with these same requests, and there is not this massive ordinance and public hearing and everything that goes with a billboard. So, I mean, the city of Hayden has been very business friendly. So I think that we need to be careful not to become, as Dan said, just so over-regulatory in many, many areas that people can't do business. We don't want that. We want a balanced approach. And I understand that people don't want a city littered with billboards, too. I don't think the company's asking for that. And so I'm asking for fairness, that's all.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
My final would be that what Kenny said is, why don't we fix it? Well, my motion illustrates that it probably wasn't broken in the first place. We had a request, we tried to make it work for something else, but since 1992, we've had these billboards, we upgraded them to digitized, and so my feeling is we are business friendly. I just don't think it was broken, and that's why I made the motion, so.
Randy, help me through this. What do we need to come up with? Do we have to have a motion that works?
You're the mayor, and you can direct staff to do whatever you would
All
like.
right. Well, I'd like to take that advice and let's throw it back. Does that help you?
To bring back two ordinances, one that repeals these two sections from the code, so we'd no longer have a distance from a residential zone or historic district, church, or cemetery, and the other one would be for the height exception. You want to leave a limitless height, or what did you want for height?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think that's not the direction I would like to give staff.
Okay.
Because no one's ever going to accept that. I think that
Just make it.
I would much rather see you come back with variances. And if there is some reason that the height can be adjusted legitimately, then that would be a variance. Same with the distance. If there's some sort of an effort made by the company to minimize,
Or to justify.
that would be a variance. I'm not suggesting that we have no restrictions whatsoever.
I mean, I think Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I think if we are going to have a hearing, then I really think we should do it kind of like we do with planning, which is make them have the burden of proof. show us that it's going to be a good thing, as opposed to just having a bunch of rules. I mean, give us a chance to have some input and some thought up here, especially since it's a hearing. Otherwise, it's just a black and white yes or no. Oh, you didn't meet it. I'm sorry. I mean, then what's the point of a hearing? But I would like to see the same thing, which is what Randy said, is bring back the motions. First one would be to repeal it, because obviously if that one passes, it's done. And then the second one to proceed as suggested.
So we're only directing them for
So
the
to
height
proceed-
and the two things they didn't qualify for.
The variances.
Well, so basically, you're asking to add a section that allows variances without actually eliminating those two sections, just allowing a variance from those.
That's correct.
Would that be easier, I think, on
I think
you
so.
guys? So, yeah.
Renata, you good with that?
Yep, we can propose something at the next council meeting.
Okay, we'll make it so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No motions, no votes?
Well, they
Moving
got
on.
their
Public
direction.
hearing.
Okay.
But I do think it's exciting that when you can qualify all the things, we have massage parlors, liquor stores, and billboards that have to have permission to move. One of those things doesn't belong.
Right.
That's just my
Massage
thought.
parlors,
It's
right?
the massage parlors, definitely.
Well, but it is interesting that you have to have an occupancy permit for any commercial property, so technically, government does tell you what commercial businesses can be where.
Yeah, I know.
So it's that, you could have that conversation, we'll do that later on.
Chris,
Seriously.
welcome.
Over booze.
On your
we'll do
time.
that.
We do have a public hearing.
Oh, we do still,
Okay, that's a public hearing. So this is, let me see, we're doing the vacation of alley known as portion of Block 15, Coeur d'Alene Kings Edition. Thanks for staying up late for us, bud.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Sure.
Chris,
Mayor, I'm just gonna grab some water. I'm not leaving.
I have two people signed up, okay, to speak to this, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm standing in for Dennis Grant today, who normally does these vacation requests, but I didn't think our whole staff needed to be here
He's on
tonight.
vacation.
So, yeah, he's on vacation from this vacation tonight. So, the applicant, Blue Fern Development, is requesting vacation of a 20-foot right-of-way of an alley located between First Street and Second Street and Garden and Wallace, as you can see in the exhibit here. This is where the Roosevelt is located. Show you on this. Right here is where the Roosevelt Inn is located, and there is also an apartment building at the corner here. 73 notices went out to nearby property owners, 0 were returned. The applicant has met with the owners of those properties to secure easements for access. They are also developing an easement for, well, actually, that was the easement for the sewer that runs down the alley was approved under the consent calendar tonight. The applicant will also be forming an agreement with the various utility companies, power and communications that run down the alley also. So normally, when a property is vacated like this, half goes to each side, to each abutting property. In this case, the properties to the south had no interest in it, so all the property would go to the north. So ultimately, Blue Fern would be taking that property into the parcel that's to the north here. And then when they subdivide this into, to do their condo plat, it'll work with their plan development there. I don't think I have any more details that I need to give or bore you with on this, but I would stand for any questions.
Good. Questions? I have to ask the gray line, is that the railroad? The old one?
Yes, yes. You can see some of the right-of-way actually runs parallel to that, through that area.
It's pretty cool to see
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Someday it won't be there, right?
Right.
It's not there now.
All right, so, at this point, I can take some public comment, and I have two people on the list that are interested.
Mr. Mayor, you sure that's the right public hearing?
Oh, am I, oh, where am I? Sorry. You're right. This is new stuff.
Actually, you have to open the
Oh,
hearing
I
and
see.
see if
You
anyone
gave me
wants to
both.
testify.
Ah. So I don't have anybody signed up on this one. Well, this is no fun. Anyway, if anybody would like to come up and make a comment about the railroad or something fun here, hearing none, I will close the public hearing, public speaking. Moving on.
So where are
Council
we?
action, that's
So I would
kind
make a
of you
motion to,
guys.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill 241022 once by title only.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call.
Gookin.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Council Bill 24-1022, an ordinance of the City of Coeur d'Alene vacating a portion of alley right-of-way within Block 15 as shown in the plat of Coeur d'Alene and King's Edition, recorded in Book C of Deeds, pages 144 and 145, records of Kootenai County, Idaho, generally described as that portion of the alley right-of-way lying east of the First Street right-of-way and lying west of Second Street right-of-way, being situated in Section 13, Township 50 North, Range 4 West, Boise Meridian, City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, repealing or ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance and an effective date hereof.
Thank you, Joe.
And
motion?
part two, Mr. Mayor, would be to adopt Council Bill 241022.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Gookin.
Of course.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
we
Merry
are
Christmas.
coming, thank you for helping me guide me through this. We are going to do an annexation request for 2.2 acre parcels in the county suburban to city R12 residential 12 units per acre, location 3415 North 15th Street. Is there any conflict for the council? Sign-up sheet. I have 2 people signed up for this.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Staff
you, Mayor.
report.
Before I get started, I just wanted to give some kudos. I think the street department did a wonderful job downtown. Looks really beautiful, festive. The resort, it's looked as good as it has in a number of years. So I'm very pleased with downtown. All right, on to the annexation. So tonight before council is a request for annexation of 2.12 acres, A224. Property is located at 3415 North 15th Street. Applicant is JBR Land Holdings LLC. Connie Kruger is the representative. She is available tonight for questions. She will follow me with her presentation. So the decision point tonight is should City Council approve the requested annexation at an R12 PUD zoning district. So this is a photo of the site. You can see the frontage lies along 15th Street. To the south, the closest cross street is Lunsford Lane. Currently, the subject property is located in the unincorporated area of the county, consisting of one parcel that has a single-family dwelling located on it. The property is currently zoned agriculture suburban in the county. As part of the annexation request, the applicant is proposing R12. The PUD was approved by Planning Commission and applied to the subject site. It's also located within the area of ACI, which is the area of impact, and that is denoted on this map right here in yellow, and city limits is in the green. Subject property is highlighted there in black. So Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, they found that the annexation request met all of the required criteria and recommended adoption of the R12 PUD zoning in conjunction with the annexation request at their meeting on November 12th of 2024 by unanimous vote of 6-0. Public comments were provided, hard copies were provided to council, and all of the meeting requirements have been met. That was mail, printed, as well as the property was posted. Here's an annexation map. provided by the applicant. So as part of the zoning nearby, you can see it is surrounded by all of residential zoning, R5 to the west, the kitty corner, R17, R12 actually abutting the property, and then an R12 PUD to the north. So the R12 zoning and what it allows single-family duplex-type housing. The PUD did allow an alteration to that, an exemption from that, so they requested 6 plexes, which was approved. And so there's a number of findings that need to be made for annexation. The first finding is B1, is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Inside of the comprehensive plan, the future land use map states that this is a mixed-use low area is what's anticipated. There is no commercial element associated with this request. That being that it is less than what was anticipated. What that means is they didn't need to request a change to the comp plan, trying to go over and above what was allowed. Comprehensive plan is guidance. So generally, legal and council and planning commission has said if it's de minimis to what was actually what's actually envisioned, that it doesn't need that change. Okay, next, so this is a description of the mixed-use low. I won't read that into the record. It's long, and it's been a long night. It's also in your staff report on page 9. Suffice it to say that it says that it also could include townhomes and multifamily housing, which is what the request was for. So different transportation element portion of the comp plan. So this is the bicycle network, the walking network, and the CityLink routes. And you can see the subject property is pointed to on each one of those 3 maps. And last but not least for the comprehensive plan is the policy. There's 4 different pieces of policy. 3 of them were identified and included in your staff report on page 10. The 3 are comprised of community and identity. Goal 1 is that citizens are informed, responsive, and involved. Goal CI3 is Coeur d'Alene will strive to be livable for median and below income housing levels, including young families, working class, low income, and fixed income households. And moving on to environment and recreation, there are 2 goals identified as well there, and then growth and development, there are 3 goals that were identified. I won't read those into the record, it'll take a long time. So finding B2 is that public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. We did receive comments regarding those, and suffice it to say that each one of those had no concerns or no limitations placed on there. And at the most of them, the stormwater and streets, they said at the time of permit, as part of streets is requesting 10 feet of right-of-way along 15th Street to be dedicated to increase the width of 15th Street, and that will happen at the time of plat. Water said they had adequate supply, and sewer did not have any concerns either. Fire department was pretty much boilerplate language that we get from them. Time of permit, they will review that. For turnaround and hydrants for the plat, and then permit is like sprinklers. We had a lot of discussion about those tonight, sprinklers and air systems. Police, I talked to David Hagar. He said that there was no new issues. No issues there. Okay, so finding B3 is that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. So the subject property is fairly flat. I showed what staff uses to review this with 5-foot contours, what the applicant provided with 2-foot contours, and there's no concerns there. Additionally, there are some photos. This is across the street from 15th looking into the subject property. This is looking along 15th to the south, to the north, and further to the north from the edge of the subject property. This is from interior of the subject property looking towards 15th. This is interior of the property from the furthest western point looking south, and then this is along Lunsford Lane, which is the closest cross street. Finding B4 is that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and land uses. So we did receive some feedback from our departments regarding this. Chris Bosley, he is here tonight if you have questions of him, has stated in the most pertinent point of his comment was that approximately the 2.5% increase in traffic can be accommodated by 15th Street. Currently, 15th Street adjacent to the proposed project is only 2 lanes, but adequate width exists to create a center turn lane during a future chip seal or overlay to accommodate left-hand turns without impacting through traffic. As for neighborhood character, these are the land uses that are nearby. There is multifamily, single-family, detached, as well as duplexes that are located around, and civic uses as well. So there are 19 recommended annexation agreement conditions that staff is proposing tonight. They were approved by Planning Commission in their entirety. A couple of them are tied to the PUD. Fire and wastewater are fairly boilerplate. They are standard policies for the city of Coeur d'Alene. Planning had some concurrency and future connection to the north in case the property to the north gets annexed, that there's some sort of connection to that. And with that, we'll end my staff report. So City Council will need to consider this request for annexation for R12 PUD zoning and make findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. Findings worksheet is in your packet, as well as the annexation agreement draft. And with that,
questions for
stand
Sean?
for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean, so we don't have the PUD. What is the final density per the PUD?
It is R12, so that is.
Plus anything else? I mean, what is the actual,
The
I know it's
number?
R12, but did the PUD allow for a higher density?
No, PUDs cannot request higher density.
Oh, really? Okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Questions? Kenny?
Sean, does this eliminate all the islands within the city? The
All of them?
non-incorporated islands? I mean, are we getting close?
We're getting closer.
Because they are a pill sometime when it comes to response and stuff. It's more of these, the better, I think.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But it's one more down.
Chris, Vicky?
Sean, maybe you know the answer to this, but when talking about in the street department, there's enough width to put that turn lane in with the next chip seal. And maybe Chris needs to answer this. I thought that section was just done. When would the next opportunity to put a left turn lane in there occur?
Yes, that section was recently chip sealed, but typically we should be going back every 7 years is a pretty common cycle for re-chip sealing roads. So we should be going back in a few more years to do that. But it all depends on what kind of traffic we're getting in that area and the condition of the pavement and all that. So as those developments in that area build out, we can look at the need for that and we can fast track that if we need to, but right now we don't see the need for it.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my head around. It feels like you weren't really confident with the traffic capability for that particular street and therefore suggested the left turn lane the next time it chip seals. Can that not be done with a painting realignment?
Well, you can. It's more expensive to remove those pavement markings without the chip seal. I mean, as a standalone, it's costly to obliterate pavement markings. So that's why we usually wait until a chip seal or overlay when we're going to be doing pavement maintenance anyway, because it just erases it all, gives us an opportunity. that section of road has more than enough capacity. It just would help to take left turn conflicts out of the way to ease traffic. Like if you look at the section from Harrison down to Sherman where there are no left turn lanes and there's not even enough room to sneak by somebody, when somebody's trying to turn left, it can slow people down during
And they
peak
do it
hour.
anyway. But you are keeping it, there's quite a few new developments in that section, so you're kind of have it on your radar for potentially mitigating that sooner than later, maybe?
We will definitely keep watch on that. There are, I think, 2 more pieces of this island of county property in there that could be developed, and definitely when all of those are in, that would probably be a good time to take a hard look at that.
And there's also a couple of new projects being built in there that we've already approved, so it
Correct.
just looks like it's ramping up faster. We just wanted to double check on the traffic side of that. Thank you.
Any other questions, Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean, I guess, I noticed that planning and zoning unanimously approved bringing this forward to council, but I couldn't find any public comment from their hearing. I did see that we were provided this right before the meeting. Was there public comment during that planning and zoning meeting?
Over like
On
verbal
this specific
or written?
project?
All of the written comments were provided to council for
Written, okay, so there was no public testimony.
I'd have to go back and look.
Okay. All right, I have
I'm
these.
not certain about that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
At this time, we need an applicant. Is that, Connie, are you the applicant? You have 10 minutes to present. Okay, neither.
Okay. So a lot of my slides, Sean has duplicate slides or slides that are pretty similar, so I'll just try to move through those pretty quickly. But a couple of the key items about our proposal tonight, we are requesting the annexation with the R12 zoning, also the PUD and the preliminary plat have been heard by the Planning Commission, as you've heard. This is in a developed area of town. There are no environmental concerns, no wetlands, no steep slopes, high water tables, those types of things. We are located in an area where there are other multifamily and commercial land uses and also community services that are within that general area. And we're also located directly on 15th Street, which is a minor arterial. So, again, it's anticipated that it will carry a higher traffic volume. Any of the standards that have been put forward to us and conditions we're willing and able to comply with. We will be able to meet all of the engineering and building standards, and again, we've complied with all of the code requirements. We will have an HOA that will maintain the PUD, and importantly, one of the findings for an annexation is that we have utilities and services available to the site. We'll also be providing for some additional right-of-way and utility easements out on 15th Street. And anything internal to the site will be improved and extended at the cost of the owner. And then, of course, we'll be paying any of your applicable taxes and fees. With this, the permitting that we'll be seeking with the city, or that we have been seeking, is a combined plan unit development annexation and preliminary plat application. When we first started this project, we started these separate applications, and the staff really encouraged us to come back and to do a consolidated application so that there was an awareness when we requested the annexation and the zoning of what we were planning to build. So there was a question earlier about our plan density. The plan density is exactly what the R12 zone district allows. And by bringing that PUD forward at the same time, we've been able to provide that detailed information on that. Later, we'll be submitting the engineered plans for the subdivision infrastructure and then a final plat application, and then we'll be doing a final townhome plat application. This is a quick look at the project. Again, not the topic tonight, but just informationally to be aware that we are, developing, putting in roads, putting in utilities. This is a little dog park that will be part of our development. This shows the extension of all of the utilities. You see that we'll be bringing in 8-inch mains, 8-inch for both sewer and water, fire hydrants, and also that we'll be having improvements that will make out onto 15th Street, including importantly street trees and sidewalks, which are part of the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. We'll talk about those here in a minute. With that, the current zoning is agricultural suburban in the county. That is defined as a zone district where the land has been found suitable for residential and small-scale agricultural uses. And again, we're within an urbanizing area of the community, so probably not the best fit for the property anymore. We are proposing that R12 zoning, and if you look at that zoning, again, you have a residential area. It allows for a mixture of housing types and the density of not greater than 12 units per gross acre. And we are in an area with a lot of different housing options along 15th Street, and I just thought it would be helpful to provide some examples of some of the currently constructed projects that are along 15th. This is Latitude Lane here. This is a more recent project here in the city. Monte Vista, again, kind of showing, I think that's a 55-plus community. This is just a little townhome cluster that we have. I think these are actually duplexes. And moving further up and across the street from us, we have some fairly high-density R12 and R17 zoned products, which are Canfield Court and Canfield Estates. So kind of difficult to see the density, but if you take a look at this, these projects in this area are right across the street from the property that we're talking about here. The comprehensive plan for the city has this designated as a mixed-use low place type. Sean already hit on this. I think one thing that's really important to this is the last sentence. This place type is typically developed along a street grid that has excellent pedestrian and bike facilities. So again, we'll be building those sidewalks, and this is in an area where those types of facilities already exist. Again, a very established street network in that area. I did include this place type because I do think it's important to note the compatible zoning of the place type actually allows you to go up to a C17 or C17L. We're actually proposing the R12 because we think that it's a better fit for the neighborhood rather than these higher density commercial zones that would be allowed based on the comprehensive plan. Again, this has been covered, but we're within an area with established street grid, established bike network. We have a planned walking network. And then also, just importantly, there are a number of different parks that are surrounding the area. So again, lots of different facilities, services, open space for people, and we'll be providing for our own. In the package that I submitted to you, I do have a number of different comprehensive plan goals and objectives. They're not always the same as what the city staff provides. So you see, as we look at the comp plan, it can be interpreted different ways. I'm not going to go through all of these because, again, they're provided in the information that we've given to you. But I did think that this was a good objective of the comprehensive plan related to growth and development. And so, again, from the 2024 comprehensive plan, future growth is focused on improving our city's livability with a plan for a mix of land uses that are walkable, accessible, attainable housing options, employment opportunities, healthcare, quality schools, and recreation. Neighborhoods include a variety of housing options, services where residents can walk or bike, cafes, shops, services, jobs, and open spaces. Existing and future development is connected by an extensive multimodal transportation system that incorporates public transit, automobiles, and safe and convenient pedestrian bicycle routes. So in looking at this area along 15th Street, really the only thing that we're lacking is public transit. But as you're aware, there are many areas in the city that we don't have public transit. We're fairly limited on our options there. So I do think that by requesting this R12 zoning that we really are fitting in with a multitude of different goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. But I think also really importantly with this objective that we see here. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Connie? Hearing none, thank you, Connie. Oh,
Sorry.
you gotta put your hand up.
I know.
Okay, that'll help.
It is. Apparently it's okay.
Vicky, sorry, Connie.
Sorry, Connie, I wasn't fast enough with raising my hand. I just have a couple things.
Sure.
In there, access to attainable housing options is one of the goals. So have you talked about that? I understand there wasn't discussion on a development agreement, and can you address how this is going to address any of that?
Yeah, so the owner is planning to create a townhome plat of this property, which means that each of the structures that is developed will have units within it that can be offered for sale. They do have a similar development that they have done in the Hayden area, and we have talked a little bit about what the market rate on those might be, and I think they were saying within like the 325 to 400,000 realm. But that conversation that I had with him was probably about 2 months ago.
So these are all going to be for sale units, not
They
rental units?
can be sold. I don't know if the owner will sell off everything or if they'll retain them. I don't know what their plan is right now.
Okay, so they could end up being rental units by a secondary owner.
They certainly could.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks again, Connie. So I'm looking now for a primary opponent, and I don't know anybody that's against it if you want to come up and speak. And then I have one other person signed up that would like to speak. Merle?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, Merle is in favor and does not wish to speak. So council? Oh, it's up to you guys now.
Close the hearing.
Close the hearing, thank you. I need a motion to close the hearing.
No, you don't.
Okay. Why not?
Just say it's closed.
It's closed. Thank you. I'm taking notes. All right, look for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'll take a stab at this. I just want to ask real quickly, do I need a second before I go through our findings in order?
No, because the.
That includes the findings in
It
order,
would
okay.
include the findings,
It's
yeah.
getting late, I'm getting,
Punchy.
yeah, punchy. All right, here we go. I'd like to make a motion to approve item A2-24, annexation of a 2.12 acre parcel from county agriculture suburban to city residential R12, residential at 12 units per acre. The location is 3415 North 15th Street, and to develop the necessary findings in order. This matter came before the City Council on December 17th, 2024, to consider A2-24, a request to annex plus or minus 2.12 acres with R12 PUD zoning. The applicant is Connie Kruger, owner is JBR Land Holdings, and the location is 3415 North 15th Street, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho 83814. The City Council finds that the following facts, A1 through A10, have been established on a more probable than not basis as shown on record before it and on the testimony presented at the public hearing. Based on the foregoing findings of fact, the City Council makes the following conclusions of law. B1, that this proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies. B2, that public facilities and utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use. B3, that the physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request at this time. B4, that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, or existing land uses. The City Council, pursuant to the foregoing findings of fact and conclusions of law, has determined that the request for annexation of a plus or minus 2.12 acre parcel in Kootenai County, assigning the zoning district R12 PUD should be approved. The City Council further orders that the annexation shall be contingent on the owners of the property signing an annexation agreement as approved by council. I'd like to note that the City Council recommends the conditions listed 1 through 19, and that there are no additional conditions at this time.
It wouldn't be recommending the conditions, but requiring. The
Requiring, thank you. think that's the end of my findings in order, correct?
Right, you got it. So, a motion, then discussion.
Second, and then discussion.
Second.
Okay,
Okay.
after all that. All right, discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm okay with the annexation, but I think the density's too high. That's it.
Christie?
Thank you. I had a question on that. I guess we don't see these that often where both are done at once, the annexation and the zoning. If, let's just say, Chris, this was already annexed into the city, what would be the eligible zoning for this piece of property? Could it be even more dense than R12? I'm sorry, Sean.
Sean.
Sorry, Chris.
On the spot.
Chris was panicking.
You got that deer in the headlights look there. Really that request comes from the applicant. And so the comprehensive plan does give guidance toward that. The applicant spoke to that. So under the future land use map, it was anticipated that it could be C17, C17L, or NC or CC. And so at a residential level, that would be 17 units per gross acre is what the comprehensive planning
But right now, it's 12. The proposal is 12. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Roll call, please.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Gookin.
No.
All right, Council Bill 241023.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 24-1023 once by title only.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. Just roll call, please.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yeah.
Joe, could you read the title one more time?
Council Bill 24-1023, an ordinance annexing to and declaring to be part of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, specifically describe portions of Section 1, Township 50 North, Range 4 West, Boise Meridian, zoning such specifically described property hereby annexed as R12, residential at 12 units per acre, repealing ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance, and an effective date hereof.
Thank you, Joe. Motion, please.
Make a motion to adopt Council Bill 24-1023.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Gookin.
No.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-099, approving the annexation and development agreement for A2-24 with JBR Land Holdings.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
Just
Go ahead.
Just two quick comments. I appreciate this traffic concerns that we've heard from citizens, and I did state that I hope we keep a closer eye on how to mitigate that sooner than later. And the second is I'm supporting this higher density because it is my hope, although it's not part of anything that we can require, that the applicant does try to keep ownership and prices down. We need that housing in the attainable range, and so I'm just hoping that that's what we get out of this project.
Mr. Mayor, I think the motion referred to an annexation and development agreement. It is just an annexation agreement.
Oh, we have a,
Ours shows
ours says differently, but I will amend my motion to.
Yes,
There was no development agreement, which
Yes,
was my
thank you.
point.
Sorry, thank you.
Someone's been copying and pasting.
Let me restate it for the record to adopt, my motion is to adopt resolution number 24-099, approving the annexation for A2-24 with JBR Land Holdings.
Thank you.
Second?
Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Gookin.
Yeah.
English.
Yes.
All right, move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn for the rest of the year.
Second.
Thanks. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say Good night, Dick.
All right.
All right.
Catch you on that.